We are live.
Welcome to the Cyberpol Virtual International Cybersecurity Summit. It is October 15th. It's 9 a.m. in Israel. It is 2 a.m. in New York, where I am broadcasting from my home. We are delighted to be hosted in partnership with Israel's I-24 news channel and joined by cyber practitioners, law enforcement, journalists, and legal experts from around the globe. It's my honor to host you today, and I promise to keep my part brief other than to quickly introduce myself. My name is Kate FAZZINI. I'm an adjunct professor of cybersecurity at Georgetown University. I've served as a cybersecurity reporter for the Wall Street Journal and CNBC here in New York, and previously held cybersecurity roles at JP Morgan Chase and Promontory Financial Group. For this morning's keynote, it is my pleasure to introduce one of the most prominent men in international cybersecurity, Ricardo Boretsky. Mr. Boretsky is president of Cyberpol and the European Center for Information Policy. He is a former principal investigator with the United Nations in Geneva, and he is a very familiar lecturer to international banks, governments, NGOs, legislators, including the US Congress. Ricardo, thank you for putting together this excellent event today. I now turn it over to you to open up the conference.
Good morning, everybody. Distinguished guests, public citizens, speakers, and worldwide internet users. Today marked the first virtual cyber policing summit online. Our vision of the future has changed. Allow me to begin to express our condolences to all the victims of the coronavirus and their families during this most difficult times. Stay strong and stay focused. We have to get through these difficult times. Let's look at the future. Today we will debate, deliberate, and look at pragmatic solutions. Solutions to the worldwide internet crimes. The current global situation and what's needed to change in order to make our world a safer place. A safer place for our children. 8.5 years ago, we established the ESIPS and Cyberpol program. And since, many things has changed. Uncountable cyber attacks on governments, banks, corporations, and public citizens has affected our world of today. Not only our perception of cybersecurity, but our conscious views of the cybersecurity and cyber world today. During my opening speech at the very first counterterrorism summit held in London in 2013, I emphasized the problems we face, such as terrorism, radicalism, and above all, cyber threats. These are real and serious threats. I quoted, "It's not a business selling candies in a candy store. This is a serious problem." I went on to bring emphasis on the growing risk of cyber terrorism. Some of the content to which is best left for the officers and agents in charge. What is important is what has changed and the increase on cybercrime and corruption. The internet is no longer a safe place. You and I are at risk. Our children is at risk. Everybody is at risk. This is the undeniable fact. During 2014, we predicted that at least 94% of all computers would be infected during that period. It was proven fact the following year when it was announced that 93% of all computers was indeed infected. Now I say again, it's certain that almost all computers today are infected, one way or another. The minute you log onto the internet, these are the facts. We said we did not assume cyber terror will increase, and so it did. Many were not prepared for this when it happened. Our observations and unconventional methods of know-how were met with much skepticism around the globe. The fact is, 2015 proved it right. Perhaps we need a second wake-up call. The question is, did we receive such call? Today, we can say cybercrime and cyber threats is unfortunately here to stay. These are the facts we should not ignore. In this world, the new world of cyber threats, we have to accept the fact that the cyber world is a world of numbers and calculations. It leaves no room for errors by any participant. Thus, in short, we cannot assume things to be correct. Neither can we assume our formulas and analytical data to be correct, since they simply aren't correct. The human race, we know, is entering the quantum age. And we should warn and tell others, not just by logic, but by fact, that turbulent times lies ahead. Thus, our understanding of the future still needs to be adopted, understood, and comprehended. Ladies and gentlemen, we have entered the quantum age, a computer age that is bound to revolutionize man, and his best friend, its laptop. With confirmed business tag estimated at €26 billion by 2025, it's clear that a lot is at stake. These are the facts. Thus, we must not assume that we know. We must be factual. If not, this will be a costly affair for you, our corporations, governments, and everybody around. Data leaks and information leaks is a high priority for many corporations. We need to examine more closely why this thing called the insider threat has emerged to such extent today. Allow me to reassure you that these threats are relatively minor in comparison to those threats that lies ahead, coming our way. These new threats are not a prophecy. It's not a question of if. It's only a question, when will it arrive? Far in the future, tomorrow, or yesterday? We could not say. The fact remains that mankind is rapidly growing closer to this computer and no longer can exist without it. We have to look at tomorrow, how the commerce is protected. These things brings us to realization. We urgently need a higher understanding of the scientific revolution taking place at an unprecedented rate in our midst today. We have to understand that the internet is not a place for traditional policing. Neither is it a place for assumptions. It's a place today which is filled with risk, crime, organized crime. These are the facts. The internet is exactly what it says, the Internet of Things. Things of the unknown, things that needs to be understood and analyzed in accordance with non-existent laws and borders, yet to be defined. The internet today places no borders. It knows no borders. It has no extents. And yet, the borders are silently formed. The recent cyber attacks on governments, agencies such as USA, United Kingdom, and Israel, it's just amongst others that is coming our way. Buckle up, ladies and gentlemen. A tough ride lays ahead. At present, we must say, even for those who is absent here today, if anybody tells you today they have found a solution, working on a magical mathematical solution to solve these problems, you are deeply misinformed. Since we know this is not true, we live in an age where quantum physics simply doesn't match and play by our rules. What we have to realize is that the internet is a planet of its own. It's a planet in which is in early stages. Life on it is in early stages, about to evolve. And already we can see and feel the impact in our future. These are the facts. In a way, we can say that man has become the creator of this invisible planet. The point I'm trying to make is that nobody knows what we have created. All we know is mankind has created the internet from a source we don't know. We call it nothing. It's important for all here, present and absent, to understand that this newly created internet planet is a living thing, alive and demanding power of itself. It lives among us, with our surroundings, and has literally become a parallel world, of which one day will be called a government with its own rules and regulations. If we do not take control, we will be in trouble. These are the facts. Thus, it's prerogative for us here to sanction, lay down this guidance and its foundation. However, we should not fool ourselves by thinking that we are in control of this thing called the cyber world. These are the facts. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy for you all to be here. Thank you to all our speakers in advance and our sponsors. We appreciate all the support. Let me round up with this. We need to stand together, grow together, finding pragmatic solutions in this thing called cyber threats. Let's begin today, the first steps in the right direction. I welcome you all to the first virtual summit of Cyberpol International. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. We will now be hearing from Victor van der Kwast, a former chairman of ABN AMRO and a supervisory board member of Turkey's Anadolu Bank. In this session, we will also be joined by Dr. Stelios Platis, a chairman of the European Institute of Management and Finance and director of the Cyberpol Academy. Dr. Platis has served as a longtime advisor to KPMG in London and as head of strategic planning at the Cyprus Popular Bank Group. I'll now turn over the mic to Mr. van der Kwast. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Victor van der Kwast. I will do a short presentation. Sorry, I couldn't sort of launch the background. It worked yesterday, but it didn't work this morning, so I thought this is then the best way of doing it. 1 second, please. I will share them my screen and I will give you the presentation that I've prepared. I hope you can hear me and I hope you can see me. My story is about the financial industry and corporates into geopolitical arena and impacted economies. And for me, it's about going through a perfect storm. If you look at my history, as was indicated, I have done a few things around the world. I've lived in 4 continents. I've traveled around over 60 countries. And my involvement was something to do with leadership, cultural, IT, compliance, digital, data. But the core of my business was either banking or insurance. So in that respect, I've seen a lot, I've done a lot, and I've been a lot involved in also cyber and cyber related issues. What it made me realize is that the world is an integrated environment with quick changes and developments influencing people, business, and governments. And if we want to look at it, it's like you now have with your Android phones. You can make a picture and you can highlight it and you can make it smaller, higher, and look at more details. That's the world of today. You can look at this in a very rapid way. But it also comes with responsibilities. It comes also with all kind of elements. Now, what I see in today's world, there is a perfect storm. And a perfect storm meaning is that everything around us seems to be in motion. We have noticed now COVID-19. COVID-19 has an impact, a pandemic. It started small, became large, and it impacts everything. Like Ricardo already indicated, cyber is also one of the elements that comes into play. But money laundering is another element, which is another form of cyber that's out there. But what does this do to all of us? Now, the economies are really concerned. The economies are really into a disarray. Some are doing very well. Some are having a very difficulty, and there is a lot of discussion about cost, because when the revenues are really under attack, then cost becomes one of the larger elements. Now, and what is really going strong and having a large impact on us is, of course, the regulator. How do we regulate the economy? How do we regulate our IT world? How do we regulate our international sort of trade and finance streams? That's an important part of the equation. A lot of companies went through the crisis and the recent crisis in a large way. Some companies have already sort of gone into bankruptcy. Others have moved very quickly and very successfully into a working from home exercise. But it also triggered a very large element of sense of urgency. Now, the whole environment has quite an impact, and as I've said before, it has an impact on revenues. It has an impact on the portfolios. Do they really sort of perform? Are there really things that are going on? Do we know it all? And what is the impact on the economy? A lot of economies are now going through a very negative spiral. Is that a short-term exercise? Is it a long-term exercise? And how do you relate to that? Now, will we have the time, and how long will be the time to recover from this? Those kind of things are clear. This is not something which is new. It has happened before. This is something, although it's very global now, and it has quite an impact on the social as well as the economic elements, and also on the cyber world. Now, what we also notice is that a lot of profitability is under pressure. Some companies still make money out of this, especially the IT companies, and the medical companies, but also other companies have a massive sort of impact because the whole distribution chain is changing, their whole delivery mechanism is changing. That all relates also again to cyber, because who is then paying? Where do you pay from? Who is behind that payment? And those kind of elements are coming into play. Provisions will rise significantly. We see now with the insurance companies and with banks that the provisions, meaning is the bad loans, are increasing dramatically. It has an impact on the regulators. How do they operate? What do they operate on? What are the challenges they have to deal with? They have to deal with solvency. They have to deal with liquidity. If you are not liquid, you cannot survive this perfect storm. Are we really in control? The anti-money laundering. Do we know our clients well enough? And if we don't know them, and do we know the clients of our clients? And are we sure that these are the right business and the right people that we are dealing with? Cost is a real concern. We need to reduce cost. That has a severe impact on the social environment, on people. on their careers, on their families. And then people behave quite often differently than they did before, and that has an impact again. Now, what we do see in the banking and insurance world is that the compliance cost is growing tremendously. The staff that is involved in it is growing dramatically. But are we really seeing the things that we need to see? Are we really in control? Now, we need to find alternatives. But what is very sure out of this whole situation is that digital is a key element that we cannot stop. It went faster. Now, what we also notice is that the world is a changing environment from a political as well as from an economical point of view. We see various elections and they become very extreme. The tone of voice becomes much more extreme and they become very much more diverse, absolute. We see war zones starting to evolve between China and India, China and Nepal. We see other type of wars happening in the Middle East, in Africa, and in other countries. There is a glooming sort of situation. That all has an impact on people's behavior. We see also the enforcement of rights. We all thought that Hong Kong would move and would be 50 years still on its isolation. It's now suddenly China. And all these kind of things are happening. Those are the things that are on our doorstep. How do we react to that is important. How do we behave in that? It's important. We see authorities changing from a democracy to a dictatorship, to a long-term sort of control. We see it in Russia, we see it in Turkey, we see it in other countries. Is that bad or it's different? You have to deal with it. Now we see refugees moving from Africa into Europe. That creates concerns not only from a control point of view, from a social point of view, but also from an interaction point of view. And if you look at the trade wars, the trade war between China and the US, the trade war between the US and Europe, even within Europe, if you look at Brexit. Now, the COVID impact is relatively large. It has an impact on everyone, and I will come back on that later. We see also that people are struggling to provide country assistance. We have a tendency to be very isolated in our own home countries, but now we have to also deal with a bigger picture. Can we afford it? Do we really want to deal with that? Now, those are the discussions that are extremely important, extremely difficult to do. Now, if you look now at if you simply focus on COVID-19, it has so much impact on everyone. It has impact on people. People work from home, staying home. They have to teach their own children again. It's an interesting circle. Employment is at risk. Different routines, less travel. You meet people differently. It all has also an impact on cyber, or on the way that you have to justify is who is behind that screen, who is behind that computer. Ricardo just mentioned is that those computers are impacted. So are we sure that we are dealing with the right person? And are we sure that we're doing the right things? And have we enough controls around that? We see it with travel, events, holidays, hardly there anymore. And if they are there, they are much smaller, they are much more sort of controlled, they are canceled. But if you look then at the business impact is really, really, really difficult. Now, if you look then at nature, we see the good news about this because there is less traffic, there is less concerns. We see less planes. It's bad for the airline companies, but it's good for the ozone. It's good for nature. We see governance. They are dealing with the debates and the difficulty is how to manage the social and economic balance. Now, economies suffering from less sales, recurring costs, different delivery mechanisms. So it's quite different going forward. It's not anymore going to be the same. And if you are adapting, fine, you can really sort of continue working. If you are having a hard time to adapt and go more digital, then you will have a hard time. So it's all about choices, it's about focus, about change. So it was all about diversification, doing a lot for many. Now it's all about focus on value and profit contribution. You have the quantity, lots of reports and data, but are we really looking at the right quantity? Is it quantity or is it quality? And those kind of things are important for us to make the right decisions. We have undefined data, various spreadsheets, extracts, but are they really structured? Are they really validated? Are they consistent? And those define then also what is your growth pattern, what is your client and your staff satisfaction, and how do you deal with Net Promoter Score? Now, those kind of things require a structural data set so that you can measure your progress. Growth, the way we did it and have grown and are now going to be different going forward. Different strategic choices, different competitive playgrounds, because the world becomes an international place. Competition, we had the usual suspects, but they are going to change. In the past, as a bank, you were always looking at ABN AMRO versus, for example, HSBC or Citibank. But if you look now at today's world, well, the competition could be a US retailer, or it could be IKEA, or it could be Google, and those kind of things have a massive impact. Now, if you then look at cost growth, cost is a certainty, but revenues is under attack. So we need to challenge our processes. We need to become much more lean. We also have to deliver differently. And that in a world where we are familiar with information technology as being spaghetti, all disintegrated, all having a different sort of heritage. And we now have to streamline that, and we have to become more efficient. Now, I always try to simplify the world, and I can even tell you very simply is what is the world of a banker or an insurance company. It started always as a product factory. A bank or an insurance company was a product factory. It worked on basis on a mortgage or on a credit card or on an insurance policy. And nowadays, everyone wants to look as a customer in the centerpiece. And what is then changing? The country is changing, the rules or the laws are changing, the product is changing. And all those kind of interactions become then very important for your decision criteria. But you need to then have the data to validate that. So data is really the core of it all. Data is also the core for a retailer, the core for an insurance company, it's core for digital delivery. If you have your data wrong, then you get into all kind of trouble. So it's all about golden data, consolidate it, be able to sort of grab the data, how to get it, how to compile it, how to extract it, how to synthesize it, and then also then create the right reports and the structures about it. Now, if you get that right, then you have a measures to grow. So what has changed and what is at risk? We see the customer buying behavior is different. They went to shops in the past, and now they go digital online. They go to different sort of shopping styles, and they have then a different sort of routine. But that's also an interesting opportunity, because then different players can come in. But it also is a risk, because you all share your credit card details and all your other details on the internet, and then suddenly there is the cybercrime coming your way, and people have to then behave differently. And there are then different sort of controls. You have the PayPals of the world, and you have all the other elements. But you then have to set it up well, and you have to organize it well. Then if you look at, there is much more internet buying. There is much more people working at home and staying at home. If you look at our corporate offices, are they really necessary? There is now a whole discussion about it. Do we really need these locations? Do we need them in the same space as we are today? Do we still need to go to London or to Amsterdam or to New York? Or can we stay at home or go much more remote and in a different sort of setting, because only 50% of our staff will go to the office? It's a different sort of scenario. Now, what we have seen in my neck of the woods, which is in the insurance or the banks, we have seen a lot of credit card fraud. We have seen a lot of identity theft. We have seen a lot of cybercrime, and we have seen a lot of money laundering elements. And those are things that we really need to get our business process around, and we need to get it solved. Now, this is in a nutshell also how this all seemed to be operating. And we've seen that compliance cost and the regulatory sort of pressure that we get is enormous. And it becomes almost unaffordable. The costs are increasing tremendously. So we have to automate, we have to digitalize, we have to use artificial intelligence to do this, because the numbers are getting higher, the patterns are getting more difficult to spot, and we need to look at that in a much more closer session. And it becomes increasingly dynamic, and we have to really trim our costs, and we have to also look at this in a different way. Now, if you then look at the actual regulatory challenge for banks and insurance, they are a little bit the same. They are different in some places, but they are also the same. It's know your clients, know your clients' clients, it's the UBO, it's the source of wealth, source of funds. And it looks very simple sort of elements, but they are very difficult to get right. And they are very cumbersome to get right, and it's also taking a lot of time to really store it right and to keep it current. The DNA and the awareness for all these things is going through emotion. And people want to, like with COVID, people in the beginning, when they get hurt, it really sort of puts a lot of attention. And then when it fades away, then people forget it again. And that keep that whole routine going is a discipline. The fines are very high, and it also then kills the organizations, but it also then triggers the attention, and people then have to pay attention. But it also the remedy is a very costly exercise. So there's a lot of attention to banks and insurance companies on the AML, anti-money laundering, and KYC. Compliance costs are increasing. We need to go digital. We need to capture all our data. We need to really look at all the elements of it, and we need to look at also at cybercrime and credit card fraud, because it is an uncontrollable system. Otherwise, we have to get some form of structure and data on it to get it organized and controlled. Now, in the insurance companies, well, it's more of the same, especially also for the life insurance policies. There, it's all about know your clients and also the ultimate beneficiary and those kind of things. And those are very difficult sort of scenarios to get right. If I then look at if you look at this chart, and the reason only I put this chart up is because it's also there are so many things that you have to deal with. It goes from GDPR, which is the privacy laws, all to the FATCA, which is all the rules and regulations, and also to deal with the US. Then you have all kind of directives which you have to deal with. And if you really look at this, you know also what is the difficulty in getting this right. Why did I do this? Because I always believe in structure. And what I always get involved in is that you step into meetings, then everyone talks a certain lingo, and I try to sort of just picture it in such a way that that it all comes there, and you could talk all this type of language of short acronyms. Now, so my way of dealing with these kind of things is putting them on a sheet and then trying to color them and then put them in a kind of an order. And like the red ones are all the regulators, the blue ones is more of an insight. Then you have the systems, which are, or the structures that you have, processes you have to get right, and you have the data sets that you have to get right. Now, it's just an interesting sort of overview of getting that structure right. No, my system doesn't work. Thank you. Now it's the integrated customer view. We as a bank, we as an insurance company, we have to get our data right. We were product factories. We now have to evolve into a customer view, and that customer view needs to have the right sort of data, the right settings, the right agreements. The definitions need to be right. The consolidation needs to be right. It needs to have the highest quality, and otherwise you can't automate it. So you need to clean it, you need to structure it, you need to make sure that you have it right. And that is not an easy task. So coming to the end of my sort of summary, or the to the horizon, if you look at the perfect storm, we seem to be in a perfect storm. We have seen companies going through a lot of discussions. We have seen governments going through a lot of changes. We see on the people agenda a lot of changes. We see on the emotional agenda a lot of changes. But from an economic point of view, we see that COVID has a severe impact. We see on the compliance side, you need to really look at the value and the benefit. We see on the economic side that there is a serious downturn. We all have to really buckle up, as Ricardo said, and think through this. And then from a cost side, we really have to address our cost base as companies, and because we are uncertain about our revenue streams. And for all of us, it is very clear: the regulator will not go away. And if you look at the cybercrime agenda of this organization and this event, it's all important to get the structures right, to get our interaction right, to learn from each other and to work with each other, because this is a core for all of us to get under control, getting insights, and making sure that we make the right ethical choices. With that, I hand it over to you back again.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. Now we're going to go to Dr. Stelios Plattis. Thank you, Dr. Plattis, also for joining us.
Good morning, everybody. Let me just get the sharing screen up as well. I hope you can see my screen. So, good morning, everybody. I would like, before I start, to extend a very special thank you to Cyberpol's president, Mr. Ricardo Baretsky, for his stewardship and leadership that brought us all here today. And of course, to Henri David from the General Secretariat for making this summit a reality. So let me just make sure this moves. Okay. I moved. Here it is. So why is it so important that we discuss and tackle the threat of cybersecurity by reference to banking, the financial services, and the economy overall? In answering that, and as a background to my contribution to this discussion, I would like to outline some key background points and some data. First, we know that cybercrime has become a very big business, with an estimated annual global impact exceeding $450 billion as crime, extortion, blackmail, and online fraud. Having said that, we also, all of us know that cybercrime is most likely underreported even at that level, making it difficult to estimate the true scale and cost to the global economy. Second, cybercrime is cyber-transmitted and cyber-enabled in an era of a cyber-dependent economy. This means that cybercrime has the potential to take place at an unprecedented scale and speed, if not stopped. Third, financial services and banking are amongst the most lucrative targets for hackers looking to gain financially from their exploits, where evidence suggests that cybersecurity threats to the financial sector have grown and have diversified over the years. Last but not least, the current health crisis, with teams working remotely and management preoccupied with managing this process, presents the perfect conditions for cyber criminals, or the perfect storm, as mentioned earlier. Indeed, the pandemic, the working from home model, the increased reliance on digital platforms, and the sudden global shift of focus of individuals, organizations, and governments created this aforementioned perfect storm. Cyber attacks are on the increase as opportunistic criminals take advantage of, obviously, this crisis. As regards the financial services and banking sectors in particular, their growing reliance on IT platforms, digitalized product channels and communication networks indeed sets them up for greater vulnerability to a wide range of operational risks. According to publicized research, cybercrime is predicted to cost the global economy $6 trillion per year by 2021. That is next year. And this prediction was formed before the pandemic. And the pandemic itself is an event that should cause businesses to consider and evaluate their capabilities to face extreme events. And we should not know, and we know by now, that falling victim to a cyber attack is not even considered as an extreme event statistically. More recent data gathered by UK's Action Fraud suggested that more than £4.6 million have been lost by victims to COVID-related cyber fraud alone. The first COVID-related fraud was reported in February, and during March, such reports increased by 400%. So while many companies have been very prudent in the past in developing and implementing systems and control for investigating and dealing with cybercrime, it seems now that the COVID-induced recession that we're entering into will cause a number of firms to not prioritize cybersecurity in an effort to economize. And this should be expected to increase the frequency of cybercrimes as fraudsters realize that now there will be little chance of discovery, investigation, or prosecution. So, turning now to the impact of cybercrime on the banking sector, over the last decade, the banking industry has gone through a series of changes, mainly stemming from rapid technological advancements. As more and more banking institutions switch to fully digitalized systems, services, and procedures, the need, obviously, for more information technology security increases. Nowadays, cybercrime emerges in banking and financial services, as it does elsewhere, for that matter, as hacking, phishing, spamming, as well as other physical and digital frauds that force such institutions to secure their networks and systems against such attacks. However, unlike other sectors, financial institutions rely increasingly more on digital solutions, not only to improve their service and transform their business models, but so as to compete and survive. And it is this widespread nature of the digitalization in the banking industry that has caused significant rise in cyber attacks against them. Allegedly, cyber attacks have illegally accessed half of the world's top 50 banking websites over the last decade, causing losses of around $1 billion per year. According to studies carried out a couple of years ago, 2018, the average annual cost of cybercrime per company in the financial sector, per company, could be as high as $18 million for the banking industry and $13 million for brokerages and other investment firms, where malware and web-based attacks were on average the most expensive type of attacks at an average cost of $2.6 million and $2.3 million per company, respectively. These numbers highlight the risk for global financial stability. Even though the financial implications of cybercrime in the banking sector are evident, losses are not only restricted to intellectual property and financial assets. Most of the times, reputational risk is the one main side effect of a successful cyber attack. Research tells us that after a cybersecurity breach, financial institutions lose 3.9% of their customers on average. Therefore, the need to increase internal defense systems as well as continuous training of employees on cybersecurity matters is of the utmost importance for all financial institutions. So even though the cost of cyber defense technology is significant, businesses, especially in the financial services sector, should weigh against the benefits of investing money in cybersecurity infrastructure that will enable them to avoid reputational and financial losses, especially, I repeat, for the banking, financial services, and the insurance sector, where trust and safety of assets is a very significant customer retention matter. Another major threat for banking institutions is, of course, the human factor or the insider threat. Employees, contractors, partners, associates who are already inside the bank's or the financial institution's secure perimeter have legitimate access to its sensitive data and IT systems. So when insiders abuse or are simply careless with their privileged accesses, or they allow themselves to be compromised by external attackers, valuable data is easily exposed. So how should regulators, companies, and governments combat cybercrime? We see regulators today taking proactive measures to assist the financial sector in mitigating the risk of regulated firms falling victim to known threats. We see governments now adopt a multidimensional approach that we'll talk later about, to supporting greater operational resilience by companies by investing in infrastructure, better and more specific regulation, specialized law enforcement, and encouraging training of the civil society. The latter being without a doubt the most effective proactive measure. And it's very important to realize that none of these measures can work in isolation. A siloed approach will not allow for the creation of a resilient infrastructure that can protect not just individual companies, but the wider economy. As an example, in the UK, the FCA, the regulator of the financial services sector, has set out various cybersecurity insights that show how cybersecurity, how the practices better of cybersecurity relevant issues of UK financial services firms come now under the regulatory agenda as the cyber threat continues to grow. FCA's approach includes best practices for organizations to be put into action, such as those that promote governance and put cyber risk on the board agenda. FCA's advice also covers areas such as identifying and protecting information assets, being alert to emerging threats, being ready to respond, as well as testing and refining defenses. To be effective in addressing this risk, however, the approach of businesses across all sectors need to change to a community-based and comprehensive approach to be able to disrupt the criminal ecosystem. This requires everybody to understand the threat from the perspective of a ruthless but rational cyber criminal entrepreneur, not a rogue hacker. And then the sector needs to work together with the broader financial community, key industries, law enforcement, and governments to disrupt and interrupt their business models. Research shows that the money spent by banking institutions today is not enough to fight cybercrime. Banks spent, they have spent in 2016, $360 billion on IT systems. And financial services firms already spent 3 times the amount that non-financial organizations spent. And yet, cyber attacks are much more effective today than ever before. This growing challenge demands new ways of working between government, law enforcement, and the finance industry. But most critically, a shift to new security models that are agile, responsive, and focus on protecting customers against exploitation. And in this, employees and the society as a whole play a crucial role in the development of a fraud prevention program that would be able to detect illegal activities and respond timely and effectively. Thus, banking institutions and the wider financial services industry need to create a holistic cybersecurity culture. However, to achieve this, implementation of training to understand cybercrimes is absolutely essential. Unless sufficient knowledge by way of continuous training, both on and off the job, is imparted to all workers, banks, and financial institutions, will not be able to safeguard themselves. Banks should also train their employees in robust and anti-fraud measures for detecting anomalous transactions to be able to alert the customers and prevent possible losses. Such training needs to include simulations of cyber attacks so as to be in a real environment, case studies, or other pragmatic scenario so that employees can understand the threats they are likely to face and are better equipped to react to cyber offenses. Can someone please turn off their microphones? Can someone please turn their microphones mute off? Thank you very much. So this training, the role of training the civil society in fight effectively cybercrime is the main reason behind the formation of the Cyberpol's own academy, Cyberpol Academy, a non-for-profit institution to help educate and train the civil society adequately and continuously so as to act as the first line of defense against cybercrime. So how do organizations respond to complex cyber attacks after they happen? Probably the most crucial element is the timely and effective response to a cyber attack. Since a cyber attack may require extensive investigation to support recovery, remediation, regulatory issues, especially in the banking and financial services sector, perhaps litigation and other associated activities. Usually, an organization engages an expert, an independent third party, to help manage the response activities in the event of such a major cyber attack. But to be effective, there needs to exist in-depth legal, compliance, and investigative experience to be able to effectively communicate with all stakeholders. A centralized cyber response plan needs to be in place for exactly this reason. Not only after the attack, but much more effectively before such an attack. This is crucial so as to be able to bring together stakeholders who may be and may have different priorities that need to collaborate in order to resolve the cyber attack. That's how responses and swift actions and remedies can be put to place. Hence, as an outline, the industry has summarized the response to a crisis to 5 steps, which of course are interdependent, and one could perform in parallel so as to shorten the time to resolution and reduce risk exposure, which is to plan, identify and escalate, investigate, remediate, resolve, and of course, lessons learned so as to move towards, as we said, the plan that needs to be in place before it happens again. I want to close my contribution to this discussion by talking about the European Union's response. So, given the size and potential threat to global stability, the European Union has recently included cybersecurity firmly in its agenda. On April 9, 2019, the European Council adopted the regulation also known as Cybersecurity Act, which introduces a system of EU certification schemes for the first time, and an EU cybersecurity agency to take over from the current European Union Agency for Network and Information Security, or ENISA. Later in 2019, the Council established a framework which allows the EU to impose targeted restrictive measures to deter and respond to cyber attacks, which constitute an external threat to the EU or its members. And more specifically, the decision allows the EU for the first time to sanction persons or entities that they are either responsible for cyber attacks or they provide either financial, technical, or any material support to such attacks in any other way. And most importantly, sanctions may also be imposed on persons or entities associated with them. It should be noted, which is also quite important, that this framework also applies to cyber attacks against non-EU member states or international organizations where restrictive measures are considered necessary to achieve the objectives of the EU common foreign and security policy. As a result of this, only 3 months ago, the EU imposed the first ever sanctions against cyber attack. The Council decided to impose restrictive measures against 6 individuals and 3 entities responsible for or being involved with various cyber attacks. These include the attempted cyber attack against the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, and those publicly known as WannaCry, NotPetya, and Operation Cloudhopper. These sanctions imposed a travel ban and asset freeze. In addition, the EU persons and entities are forbidden henceforth from making funds available to those listed. And I think this is a very good example of how things are moving and should be moving from the government and regulatory side. Thank you all for your kind attention.
Thank you so much. What a great panel. I only regret that we can't do a round of applause here in quarantine. So thank you, gentlemen, both of you, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. So next, we're going to transition into something that goes right along with banking, and that is the future threats that we may be facing. We have some very interesting, distinguished speakers, members of media and military organizations, in some cases a little bit of both. So let's get to it. Madi Inbar is one of our panelists. He's a well-known across Europe as the senior military and security correspondent for I-24 News in Israel. He is joined by Eric Brabbing, the former head of the Cyber and Counterterrorism Division for Israel's Shin Bet Security Agency, and someone who I hope is up on Eastern Standard Time like me, so that I'm not alone in the middle of the night. FBI Special Agent Darren Mott, who hosts the popular Cyber Guy podcast. Thank you all for joining us, and take it away, Maddie.
Sorry, Kate, we have a technical issue just to mention here. Kate, it's session 2, not session 3. Introduction to session 2. Introduction to session 2, please.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I skipped ahead in my introductions and I probably panicked a few of our panelists. So I'm going to go back to session 2. My apologies for confusing anyone. So we have 3 terrific speakers here now. I'm starting with Andy Bates, the Executive Director of the Global Cyber Alliance and former CTO for Verizon in Europe. My apologies, Andy. He is joined by Mehmet Ali Demirci, an expert forensic analyst with the Court of Turkey and CEO of GM Informatics, and attorney and City of London Councilwoman Emma Amatullah Atam. Thank you all for joining us. I turn the podium now over to Andy Bates. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kate. And hopefully you can see my slides now, yes? Yes, I'm getting a thumbs up from Kate. So brilliant. Let's go. So I've got 11 minutes, which is a short time to cover quite a lot. So I was hoping to give you a view of some trends that we're seeing in cyber and potentially some solutions, because I think we're probably all bored with going to cyber conferences where everybody tells us about the big problems, but doesn't really give us an answer. That gives me a short moment to say thank you personally to Ricardo. I came to the first Cyberpol conference that Ricardo organized in Belgium several years ago. So it's also good to be amongst friends such as Mark Howard and Professor Abraham, who I know are in the green room as we speak. So moving on. So we talked about the agenda. I want to help you to think differently through this conversation, which hopefully will help in the fight against cybercrime. Quick word on our founders. I think that you all know that we were founded, GCA, by the City of London Police, the New York District Attorney, and the Centre for Internet Security. And Dr. Stelios has helped me by referencing Action Fraud, which of course is run by the police on behalf of the UK for cybercrime reporting. I'm showing a picture of a water pump, and this is the think differently moment. I often say to people, imagine if the internet and the security industry, in fact, if the water industry was like the internet and the security industry, we would pump you dirty water. We would sell a small water purification plant for your kitchen, and we would call it something geeky like a firewall. You'd still get a virus, and we all blame the Russians. So pretty bad conversation. So I had that conversation with the World Economic Forum about 18 months ago, and I'm pleased to say that at Davos in January this year, I'm afraid I didn't get to go to Davos, but at least we have a picture of it. They produced a paper which we and BT, 20 of the telcos and Europol helped to create together. And this is really a way to get the internet providers and the telcos to create a much cleaner, safer internet backbone. So if there's one thing we take from today is if you know an ISP or you are an ISP, please look at this paper, please contact me. There's some great work in there from, like I say, big telcos, including BT from around the world, and some great recommendations to make all of your lives that little bit easier. So moving on, Dr. Stelios has done some great work to mention on this already. My joke for this morning is no cyber conference is good without a picture of a virus. So here's a picture of a virus. Unfortunately, it's the one we're all talking about quite a bit. So I wanted to talk about some statistics we've seen. You may not know that we built a platform called Quad9 in collaboration with IBM and PCH. It's free to everyone. So today we believe around 200 million people have pointed their DNS to 9.9.9.9. And if you do that, we stop you getting to known criminals that we're aware of. In fact, our database runs to around 4 million criminal sites. In January, we were seeing around 16 million blocks daily. So this is people who would have clicked on a phishing link, downloaded a virus, been to a bad site. Excuse me. In February, we saw this go to 60 million, and that was entirely because we brought on 2 new threat intelligence feeds, nothing to do with COVID. So the good point there is that there's nothing like sharing threat intel to help the world. However, by April, that went up to 100 million. So from 16 million in January to 100 million, that remaining 40 million incidents daily was majoritively attributed towards COVID-19. So I think that relates quite closely to what Dr. Stelios was saying earlier. So another trend we're spotting, and we talk to a lot of banks, as Dr. Stelios does, is cybercrime goes down market. And this is maybe a joke for the UK audience, and I had to find some vinyl and take a picture of it yesterday, so apologies for the poor quality. But the point of this is everything counts in large amounts. So Dr. Stelios is absolutely right. Large amounts of money are being stolen from banks. However, to steal 10 million from a large bank who spends 100 million on cyber defense is actually quite difficult. And then moving 10 million, not that I've ever tried to do this, is, I'm told, quite difficult to move it through the financial systems. Whereas stealing £100 or dollars from 100,000 people still gets you 10 million. If you can do that across 100 different law enforcement jurisdictions, then you've achieved the same goal, but almost nobody would report that. Nobody would mention the incident. So we're certainly picking up these trends. Some of our partners have seen this in the environment, and certainly of all the big banks we're speaking to, they believe, probably incorrectly, that their perimeter is pretty secure, but it's their customers that has become the issue. So one of the solutions we've done alongside MasterCard is create our cybersecurity toolkit for small businesses, effectively free tools and advice that many of the panelists today will give to people out there, but it's a good way of curating these things in a simple, easy to understand, digestible concept. So moving on and still being controversial, so deception is our friend. Now, deception is a bad word, but let's face it, the criminals are deceiving everybody all the time. So I put this up because the military people in the audience will love this. This is clearly an inflatable tank. I wish I had one of these in my garden, but what's the point of an inflatable tank? It deceives the enemy into thinking that it's a real tank. So if you're sat in the real tank and this tank is hit by a shell, then you're having a good day. But more importantly, you know where the enemy's fire is coming from. So in the industry, we call this honeypots. So we've worked with partner Shadow Server. We inherited the honeypot network with 1,200 nodes that was built to fight the Myra botnet. So the thing we're doing today, and other people in the industry are doing, is building honeypots. Not just ourselves, but many partners are building either phishing honeypots, so to catch the phishing criminals. Some people have actually built entirely spoof companies registered at company's house to encourage cyber criminals to try and attack a synthetic asset rather than the real asset. This is great as a distraction technique. It's also great to be able to improve that threat intelligence. And I said in the first slide how important threat intelligence is to us all in this fight. Conscious of time and moving on for the big finish in terms of domains. So we've been doing a lot of work this year with ICANN and organizations like PIR and CentralNIC, who are big domain owners. So this really is the eye test slide for you all. And if this doesn't wake everybody up this morning, then I don't know what will. So in an audience participation session, I would say, what do you see amongst all of these? So to help you with that, the first thing is there are no English words there. There is nothing that my mother would ever click on. Everything is a hexadecimal string. But the thing that the eagle-eyed amongst you would spot is almost every domain on there has got a repeat copy across a different TLD, a different top-level domain. So I think for the detectives in the audience, you could easily see that if something exists across Black Friday feedback hosting and .org, as you can see on the slides, that domain is likely to be criminal elsewhere. I should say that all these domains I'm showing you on the slide were criminal sites. So they're phishing sites, malware, exploit sites, C2 sites. We'd pick them up off a variety of our platforms and partners, so they're not all from one set. And they are, by the way, historical data. But if you do come across these, please don't click on them. Bad things will happen. But my point here is that we are picking up massive trends whereby, to move on to this slide, criminals are actually using low-cost domains. So amazingly, criminals use their own credit card now to buy domains rather than stolen credit card. Because of course, if I use a stolen credit card, I'm clearly a criminal. If I spend 99 pence or 99 cents buying a domain with my own credit card, they suspect nobody's after them or going to spot these trends. And so they continue. DGA is domain generated by algorithm, which is what we've just shown you there. So there's a lot of that in terms of our database and those extra domains we're seeing. They're generated by algorithm, which means the good news is if you can understand that algorithm or use AI techniques, it's a lot easier to find those mass repeat incidents that we've shown you on the previous slide. So potentially some good news there. So ourselves, we're working with the domain industry. I mentioned some names already to genuinely clean up the domains. I think reporting all of these crimes to law enforcement would give law enforcement, there's not enough police officers on the planet to arrest all of the cyber criminals out there today. However, industrially shutting down their infrastructure, working with the domain industry is a trend which we're definitely part of. And there are plenty of other people now starting to do this. So I can report, having spoken to most of the domain industry, if you think they're not willing to lean forward and help with the solution, they absolutely are. And they're keen to receive your help as well as ours in this fight. So to close out, again, back to the water pump slide, let's think differently. My water supply is reliable. My mother uses 240 volts electricity to make a cup of tea. I don't need to build her a security solution. I don't need to train her how to use electricity. My dream and some of these things we've talked about today are to get to the point that eventually I want all of you and my family to be able to use the internet without having to be an internet security geek. So I know we'll be talking more about these as the day goes on, and I know Professor Abraham will be running conferences later in next month as well. We'll be talking in some more detail about some of these assets and some of these techniques. But I think there we are, exactly on 11 minutes. So I hope that was useful for everyone, and thank you very much, and enjoy today's conference. And thanks again to Ricardo and Cyberpol.
Thank you so much. We're going to turn it over now to Mehmet Ali Demirci. Mehmet, to you.
Hello, Kate. My voice is okay, I think so, right?
All is working.
Yes.
Yeah, let me share my presentation. Ready for it. Hello all for this great event, especially so much thanks to Mr. Baretsky. This is a great event of the cybersecurity era. So I am joining you from Turkey. We're gonna talk about a bit from cryptocurrencies. My name is Mehmet Ali. I am owner and the manager of the Turkey-based ICT company, ICT services company, GM Informatics joint stock company. As well as my background depends on cybersecurity, cyber criminal activities, as well as the technical side, the blockchain solutions and the architectures on it. And unfortunately, cryptocurrency crimes that most of us issuing right now with the ransomwares and the scams around. Because of the ongoing pandemic, we are not able to meet up with you in a conference room. However, I believe with this online session, as an agency, Cyberpol is creating a mass interest on cyber attacks, strategies, and crimes and scams, etc. So let's warm up a bit with economics, because cyber era is directly related with the mass economic system. So in the modern world, there is a cliche from the previous eras. Maybe most of the viewers all heard about this. If there are two economists in one room sharing one room, you are bound to have at least three options. Actually, the subject I'm going to talk about today is, however, with respect to economics, the cyber crimes that is manipulated and speculated by cryptocurrencies. Not more 20 years ago, even if you tell a person that the term about the cyber economics, they will be laughing at you. Actually, turning the topic from economics to cybersecurity, which both have correlated effects on each other, I want to give an example of cybersecurity guys sharing one room rather than the economist. If you have two black hats in one objective they are targeted, I am even please take attention on that. I am not even saying that they are even sharing one room. Rather than you have three opinions or actions, you may have dozens of cyber criminal cases noted around and within the different continents and within the different countries. This is unfortunately also true for cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and the altcoins around, especially the privacy ones. Let me tell you a few things about the basics of cryptocurrencies. I'm sure that every attendee here heard about the term Bitcoin. Is it a money? Is it an asset? Is it a commodity? It is not clear yet by the authorities, but which is a kind of digital money that has been theorized and suggested and even put on track by an unknown name or agency or government, Satoshi Nakamoto. The year was, I think so, 2008 or so, where the subprime mortgage crisis hit the world, starting from the USA. And So you know the later effects, what happened to the banks, the guarantors, the investment companies, the stocks, and all of them, to us, what happened to us, to the people that living in this world. Leaving the conspiracy theories about the Bitcoin beside, cryptocurrencies has created a muddy water platform for the millennial Y generation and the Z generation, especially for the black hat and gray hat hackers. The anonymity factor for Bitcoin, especially privacy coins like Monero, Zcash, Dash, and Verge, even some argue that they are right now they don't have the anonymity factor right now. There are researchers right now from the academic side. They created a unique platform for the criminals to sell any kind of forbidden things through Tor networks and dark web, especially previously known as Silk Road, as the most widely known dark web platform. Silk Road was using for illicit activities. There is no comment on that. For money laundering issues, for computer hacking articles, for narcotics, and many more. Thanks to FBI that around 2013, I think so, the Silk Road coordinator has been arrested, and the Silk Road, the darknet, the premium darknet market, Silk Road halted. Frankly, Bitcoin was an answer to main governmental monetary policies and a revolutionary product that eliminates middlemen and escrows and yet maintain high trust of cryptographic techniques and mathematics. Thereby, peer-to-peer, what we call in a technical form, is realized about 10 years ago. It's worth examining the technology behind the blockchain and the decentralized ledgers, which are mostly technical terms, that these technologies can maintain trustship and non-custodial platforms. To be honest to ourselves, most practical usage blockchain technology is right now cryptocurrencies. Even there are some researches on the logistics sector and the fintech adaptations of the banks. The mostly known known platform is cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and Ethereum and Litecoin and the others. And unfortunately, as I stated before, they are exploited and right now abused by the hackers and the scammers, actually. Let me tell our viewers something that definitely cryptocurrencies, especially the privacy embedded ones like Monero, the others also, Zcash, Dash, they are mostly known by illicit activities. And even I can argue on that why cryptocurrency exchanges accepting these kind of tokens and coins, I don't know. Ransomwares that has the ability, you know, the previous speakers also took attention on that, has the ability to encrypt files and folders of the individuals, companies, hospitals, governmental agencies, and then city admins are the most difficult threats for the cyber securities as us we are issuing right now. Because most of them uses impersonation, social engineering, and differentiate phishing tactics, which are not much technical. I mean, these are technical terms, but however, keep in mind that there are issues here. These attacks are not equal to the we know in the past, like middleman attacks or epsilon attacks, or on the cryptocurrency side, 51 attack. So what is the problem here? In today's world of Bitcoin and the other crypto assets, they dominate approximately, this is not an exact amount, but they approximately dominate a $350 billion market, according to some websites around, which also it skyrocketed in 2017, as most of viewers can remember. Now there are 7,300 coins and tokens around. Can you imagine that? 7,300. And most government security exchange commissions and capital market boards do not name these cryptocurrencies and crypto tokens as a security, commodity, bond, money, or any financial asset. What I am trying to say that they are not backed by anything rather than the greed and fear. This is exact. No one can argue on this. But on the other side, people are buying and selling this for many reasons. The most known is the store of value for the Bitcoin. The time will answer these. However, in today's world, in the world of cybersecurity, improvements in communications, especially peer-to-peer and non-custodial platforms and decentralized databases, resources located anywhere, people building material capital anywhere, they produce products anywhere, and they sell it anywhere, and they are located anywhere in the cyber platform. As you know, there are no boundaries, as Mr. Bareski stated in his previous speech. For the first time, the global economics by the pinch of cryptocurrencies has changing its form from centralized bank concepts assisted by governments, policies, regulations, sanctions, etc., to a new form of decentralized concept that anyone can mint a sort of money. I mean, what I am stating, the money, even it's the not related term, they can mint a sort of cryptocurrency or crypto token or crypto asset. It varies, and create a monetized ecosystem by the help of blockchain assisted technologies that are decentralized. Even some argue to this as a liberalization and digitalization of money. In some point, this is true. As a cybersecurity professional, what we see is a new attack surface that can yield a special attention here, big crisis to macroeconomics. So where cryptocurrencies is used actually, even the latest research showed that the variety of small businesses and enterprises trying to accept cryptocurrencies because of the volatility effect, not lately, previously, it is not preferable. And also, I want to tell that, please don't tell me that there are 10,000 ATMs or BTMs, other names. You can buy and sell Bitcoin and swap the fiat money that everyone has, like US dollar, euro, yen, yuan, Turkish lira, etc. So people and the lately organizations buying Bitcoin and the others for profit purposes, like gold and precious metal, like in my previous speech, I stated that it is a store of value, what they are trying to use as. Surely they will hold, and after they will sell and make profit on it. There is no comment on that. This also makes the market too manipulative and speculative because of the non-regulation is here. There is no regulation on that currently for the most countries. According to many research, cryptocurrency manipulation is a mainstream event. Even traditional finance asset suffer some. I mean, of course, there are financial assets in the world markets that are somehow on the background open to manipulation and maybe speculation. But this is much harder to identify manipulation in cryptocurrencies because of the decentralized factor. So there is, as I stated, there is no central authority on this and regulatory commissions. Studies show that about 88% of the 25 cryptocurrency exchanges are in manipulative position. I'm saying that top 25 of the cryptocurrency exchanges are in manipulative position. According to the Law Library of Congress, the applicability of tax laws and anti-money laundering laws or frameworks that most of the people know as, this is a banking term, AML and KYC. It varies from country to country. Even there's a framework on that. The latest framework is, I think, 5th Anti-Money Laundering Directive, which is not on stage right now. I'm not sure about that. So keep in mind on this. So what? To be honest, I am a cybersecurity guy in here and trying to protect corporates and individuals from cyber attacks, not just for their money, also their data that is relevant to GDPR in Europe and KYKK that is in Turkey as a term. And also I'm trying to protect their research, their intellectual property, and so on. And I see different forms of ransomware attacks around, phishing attacks, day by day. Every day I am seeing this. So this is where the cryptocurrency is coming, unfortunately. Crypto crimes worldwide constantly upgrading itself with sophisticated coding technologies. They are changing. They are also assisted with top listed ransomwares, top threats, social engineering, and they are. There is no comment on that. The cryptocurrencies are used and abused by cyber criminals. However, it's a good idea to keep in mind that only a small percentage, like 1.1, I think so, cryptocurrency, total transactions of the cryptocurrency are tagged as illicit activities. According to the crypto and blockchain research company, Chain Analysis. And cryptocurrency transactions used in different illicit activities are terrorism, financing, stolen funds, scams, ransomware, and there are dark markets, also child abuse material. They are mostly used as cyber criminals. I have to drop a note here because Chain Analysis company seems to be tracking the main cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and a few. They are not reporting on the privacy coins, which is rather difficult to track these coins, like I stated, Monero and the others. As most people here agree upon that, cyber attacks globally and yearly, raising day by day, yearly. But I am sure that because I'm in the business here, it is rather difficult because most issues are not reported or hidden, especially on the corporate side. If there is an attack on the corporate side, the bosses, the managers are hiding this because of the effects of the taxes and the GDPR and the KYKK here. Since the starting of my speech is around 20 minutes or so, I want to take attention here also. The global cyber ecosystem has suffered approximately $220 million cost of cybercrime since my start of speech. This cost a total of $6 trillion cost of cybercrime, according to the studies from Risk IQ company. We see it on board: malicious activities, RDP attacks, SMB attacks, SQL attacks, POP and SMTP attacks, denial of service attacks, distributed ones, especially DDoS, and unfortunately, command and PHP injection attacks that are related to the operating system, cross-site scripting attacks that are mostly related with the websites. Every minute, every hour, every day, thousands and millions of them around, mostly unreported. So coming to the cryptocurrencies again, it is interesting that this decentralized form of peer-to-peer is an angel from one perspective or devil from the other one. So let's summarize our views here. What we are looking from. As an entrepreneur, the cryptocurrencies are innovation of businesses. As most financials also argue on this. For the financials, this is a disruptive technology and adoption of finance system to the internet, or is it a new monetary system all around? Because with the latest protocols that are known as decentralized finance, DeFi's, the finance sector is also looking itself commonly. For the governments, for the government side, when looking from at that side, they are the sole actor for demolishing the sovereignty, targeting central banks, and they are mostly used for tax evasions. From my side, actually, cybersecurity professional, it is an easy way for hackers to get their profits in and out. That's clear. Cryptocurrencies are a dilemma for today's world. They offer significant advantages, but because of the lack of regulation and the compliance here, they are somehow threat to many of us. Let me remind our viewers a famous quote from one of the greatest innovators, Henry Ford. He says that if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, surely, not the cars. So he made automobiles. He created them as an innovative thinking that disrupt many sectors and businesses at that whilst creating the new ones. So thinking on the future perspective, believe it or not, you stay it or not, on this or not, blockchain technologies that supports peer-to-peer design without the need of intermediaries, middlemen, guarantors, or escrow agents will make us think so much. Not to protect networks, also computers, servers, or services. Actually, we have to protect the endpoints here. We protect ourselves. Whether you say that it's a wearable tech, I mean, it's a watch, whether you say that it's an Internet of Things, IoT, whether you say that it's an autonomous car, or it's an integrated device that is injected to our body in the near future, will be injected to our body. We all be connected to the internet, and right now we are there. At my home in Turkey, dozens of devices connect to the internet. Laptops, mobiles, tablet, Alexa devices, satellite receivers, televisions, baby cams, security cams, and even my ebook that I am using just for reading articles is connected to internet. And peer-to-peer technologies will make our jobs as a cybersecurity professional more harder than ever. We have to handle many devices, many technologies, many codes around, and we have to seek for the backdoors, zero-day attacks, vulnerabilities, and patches that has to be updated daily. So what is important here is I want to make a term here, cyber hygiene. Because hygiene is an important word of today's COVID-19 effects, pandemic world. Cyber hygiene is important on the peer side. We are all in the cyber ecosystem. From an individual perspective, like just receiving and sending email, like we did 25 years ago through Netscape navigators, or just chatting in your favorite chat application, WhatsApp, via your mobile systems, and also to complex network infrastructure systems, or operating systems that enterprises use for use in private sectors, or NGOs, or public agencies, or in a governmental perspective. Cyber hygiene is very important term. You have to take standard precautions like antivirus software, disconnecting from the internet, and when not using the computer or the device. not installing unknown apps to your mobile devices using licensed software. If a company or an organization think about just firewalls or the other security mechanisms like IDS,
1 minute left.
IPS and thank you, and IPS and UTMs. These are very classified hardwares and softwares. However, we need to protect ourselves via cyber hygiene. So this is a complete my speech. I completed my speech, Kate and Ricardo. Thanks for this event again to you, and have a good day from Turkey.
Thank you so much, Mehmet. That was great. Very excited to welcome our next guest, a very well-known face in the City of London. We have Councilwoman Emma Amatola. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed, Kate. And thank you, Andy and Mehmet. I have to say I have learned an awful lot this morning already. Kate, I think you introduced me as a councillor. It's very easily confused. In fact, I'm an alderman. The City of London Corporation is an ancient city with ancient conventions, ancient titles. The alderman, that's us, we are ambassadors for the financial and professional services rather than councillors, mainly in the emerging markets. And one of my roles there is also serving on the board of the City of London Police Authority. Before I move on, may I start with congratulating you, Cyberpol, and in particular the president, Ricardo Beretsky. This is exceptionally well organised and a very much needed summit. When I was asked to speak at this summit, I thought I would start my research as far back as I can. I was curious, how did all this start? Hacking, this is what I discovered, hacking became evident as far back as the 1970s with early computerized phone systems. In those days, we used to call these particular hackers phreakers. I suspect I'm showing my age when I say I remember those days. They would discover the correct codes and tones that would result in free long-distance service. For our young viewers, those were the days when your garbage would hold vital information, helping phreakers exploit the system. If we said 30 years ago, maybe 40 years ago, Cyberpol would become one of the most important worldwide institutions, bringing together dedicated organizations and governments in the fight against the world's most prolific crimes, I'm certain you would have consigned me to a role in advising the producers of the popular and fictional movie, The Matrix, from my elaborate imagination. Today, for this summit, I understand that we have had thousands of bookings, have had thousands of viewers from private and governmental organizations around the world. That is a remarkably high number for a virtual summit, and it is testament to the importance of the subject. This summit has broken the numbers in records. I suspect that next year, the numbers will exceed even that, and it will beat its own personal best. Cybersecurity has always had a crucial role in the global agenda, but now it has a significance at a time of extraordinary and challenging new circumstances of COVID-19. COVID-19 has brought with it a new way of living, which may be here to stay in some shape or form. From remote working to an increase in digital contactless payments, increase in online shopping, distance learning, telehealth, online entertainment, online meetings, shortening of supply chains through big data, cloud computing. Now I can hear a voice while I'm speaking on the line. So it would, things like Internet of Things and blockchain, 3D printing. Technology has been used to lessen the shortcomings and export bans on personal protective equipment. Robotics used to disinfect areas and to deliver food to those in quarantine. Drones are walking dogs, and I really must get one of those, and are being used to make deliveries. This is the world that hackers live for. In the 1970s, This innovative type of crime was difficult for law enforcement, due in part to lack of legislation to aid in criminal prosecution, and importantly, to a shortage of investigators, both private and public, skilled in technology that was being hacked. What the freakers and law enforcement did not know back then, in the 1970s, was that a man who was no more than a teenager at that time was later to invent something that was to become a fundamental part of our lives and create phenomenal disruption, a hacker's heaven, delivering the collateral consequence of why Cyberpol exists today. I was privileged to have met that teenager, albeit in his later life, Tim Berners-Lee. This was at the Guildhall in 2014, when he was awarded the Honorary Freedom of the City of London. And of course, he needs no introduction, the inventor of the World Wide Web. Today, hackers of the World Wide Web are becoming more and more sophisticated, not just in their use of technology, but also of their understanding of psychology. The one weakness that is found in each and every organization, in each and every home, is human psychology. Today, hackers understand the intricacies of social engineering, using a variety of media to con people, old and young, into offering them access to sensitive information. With technology moving ever forwards, the greed and intellectual stimulation of the cyber criminal is rewarded with hit after hit of the selfish hormone, oxytocin. Neuroeconomists, investigators, police, and prosecutors are having to keep pace, if not one step ahead of the perpetrators, to foil their novel attacks. I have worked in law for just under 24 years now. In addition to my role as alderman, I'm a barrister at No. 5 Chambers, the biggest chambers in the UK. And over this time, I have come to deal with some extremely sophisticated cases of cyber criminals. What is evident to me is that I have repeat customers. You get to know these people quite well. When the prison door is shut, no one is permitted to hear and know the conversation between lawyer and client. It is called lawyer-client privilege. And so we observe and we start to understand. When I am asked, is it greed? Is that the driving force between the misery these people inflict upon businesses, households, countries? Partly. But there is an even more powerful addiction than greed. It is that rush of oxytocin. It drives many criminals and cyber criminals alike in their need to feel the intellectual getting the better of you. Cyber attacks occur more than 2,000 a day. 1 in 13 web searches lead to malware. In 2019, when the gross world product was 86 trillion US dollars, the gross cybercrime product, that is, the benefit to cyber criminals, reached 1.5 trillion US dollars. That is greater than 2% of the gross world product. By no stretch of the imagination is that a small amount. But the statistics was pre-COVID. COVID brought with it a newer, even faster pace to the unscrupulous, whose intellectual delights and greed far surpass their understanding of the pain they cause. By 2023, the global cybersecurity market, that is, private investigators, prosecutors, civil asset recovery, will be worth 248 billion US dollars. But is that enough to tackle the cyber criminal equivalents of the Christian Colemans of the world? For those of you who are not sporty, he is deemed to be the fastest human in the world. Let me break this down. 95% of data breaches relate to 3 industries: government, retail, and technology. Some years after I met Tim Berners-Lee, I met another remarkable man at the Guildhall in March 2016, Professor Stephen Hawking. It was some 18 months before he passed away. I asked him if he saw the sheer extent of disruption that was yet to come decades into the future when his brilliant mind was engaged at Cambridge University, and at least a decade before the era of cybercrime. After all, this man held the position of Lucasian Professor of Mathematics, a position once held by Sir Isaac Newton. I have to confess, I asked that question because I'm a mere mortal and incapable of matching his brilliance of mind with a far more intellectual question on the black hole. I thought he would laugh it off and move on. Instead, he became very serious, and the answer was a pensive and sad no. Fast forward to today. What we had not envisaged then was the very real and ever-growing risk of cyber murder or cyber mass murder. Imagine the remote compromise of a device directly connected to a patient, where an attacker could increase or decrease dosages, send electrical signals to a patient, or disable vital sign monitoring. Whereas today we often associate cybercrime with economic gains to the criminal, tomorrow we will talk cyber murder and ever-increasing cyber state wars, as we have never seen them before. This is murder, as the perpetrator sits across continents. Soldiers will be in their young teens who have not yet developed a mental age of right or wrong. In law, we call that dola incapax. These are the young people with immature but brilliant minds who are at the greatest risk of exploitation by those that mean us harm. Nations already sponsor sophisticated cyber skills infiltrating other governments and attacking critical infrastructure. As the world evolves through tech, state-sponsored cyber attacks are expected to increase. Attacks on infrastructure are particularly concerning, with ongoing threats to electrical grids, water treatment facilities, even transportation systems. But state-sponsored attacks do not stop at infrastructure. They are an emerging and very real risk to private enterprise, where sectors provide convenient targets in geopolitical differences. Let's go back to hospitals for a moment. Murder is, of course, not the only fragility. Undoubtedly, hospitals and medical facilities are still adapting to the digitalization of patient medical records. Hackers with economic priorities are exploiting the many vulnerabilities in their security defenses. Other systems, also previously deemed to have economic vulnerabilities, could in a similar way fall foul to physical harm. Driverless cars are on the horizon. The connected car is already here. Connected cars use onboard sensors to optimize their operations and to adjust for the comfort of passengers. This is through tethered smartphone integration. For hackers, this is another dream, yet more opportunity to exploit vulnerabilities in insecure systems. These cars pose serious privacy concerns, but privacy breaches are the least of it. It is when the new age criminal gangs evolve from the streets and move their activities into hacker basements, bringing a new wave of physical harm through the digital world, that Stephen Hawking's words ring so true in my own ears. When I myself was a young woman at university, this was not the world that I saw when I looked into my future, but it is the world that my teenage sons will come to call the norm. Many existing organized crime groups have already changed their tactics to use COVID-19 related materials on health updates, fake cures, fiscal packages, emergency benefits, and supply shortages. An over-reliance on fragile connectivity, creating risks of premeditated internet outages, is capable of bringing trade to its needs. Or the heightened risk that ransomware will be used to hijack the Internet of Things. The intentional spread of misinformation, including by bots and automated sources, compromising trust in the integrity of information. All this causes damage. Damage to private enterprise hit by cybercrime by next year could reach $6 trillion US. But the evolution of tech cannot stop and will not stop. Countries, governments are forever wanting to be the first and ahead of the game. Last week, Reuters reported the Bank of Japan aims to start early phase experiments next year, issuing a digital currency in order to be ready should demand for one rise quickly. The bank said, from the viewpoint of ensuring the stability and efficiency of overall payment and settlement systems, it considers it important to prepare thoroughly to respond to changes in circumstances in an appropriate manner. They reiterate that they have no immediate plans to issue a digital currency, but Reuters suggests that they are trying to keep up with peers, including the People's Bank of China, which has been studying the topic for years. China gave the green light in April, just gone, for some lenders to conduct internal hypothetical use tests of a digital yuan. Cue ransomware. Ransomware strategies evolved in leaps and bounds. The rise of cryptocurrencies helped fuel ransomware attacks by allowing ransom demands to be paid anonymously. Ransomware costs victims billions of dollars every year. Hackers deploy technology to enable them to literally kidnap an organization's or an individual's database and hold all of the information for ransom. In the early days, as a criminal barrister, I recall blackmail was the preserve for young men who frequented interesting clubs at night. How things have changed. That is not to say that the blackmail of many of my businessmen clients does not involve a woman who is not his wife or partner. Instead, the modus operandi of before is oh so primitive to what was to come in modern times. Companies drive their focus on building stronger defenses to guard against ransomware breaches. But the virtual world is infinitely large, and opportunities that close here open elsewhere. I have no doubt that hackers, if not already, will move on to target other profitable ransomware victims, such as high net worth individuals. Cryptojacking is a growing trend. Cyber criminals are hijacking third-party home or work computers to mine for cryptocurrency. This requires a huge amount of computer processing power, but that won't stop hackers. They will find a solution, and they do. They secretly piggyback on someone else's system. This causes serious issues and costs for businesses trying to track down and resolve issues. So how do we stay ahead? In the City of London, we house the International Finance Centre of the globe. We have to stay ahead. The stakes are higher than ever. Rising cybercrime shakes public faith. And the key we have found is education. It is the concept of close the door before the horse has bolted. And so CyberGriffin was born over 2 years ago now, developed by the City of London Police and headed by Charlie Morrison. We came to recognize that many cyber attacks could have been prevented if the targets understood the current trends and methods of the hackers. And so this small but exceptional police force, with highly skilled and dedicated teams, developed the hugely successful program of CyberGriffin. CyberGriffin is an intelligence-led service with direct access to police and action fraud databases. They are continually updated to reflect the most relevant and prevailing threats to financial institutions and businesses in the city. It is a free of charge service, subsidized by the City of London Corporation, of which I'm an alderman. Information and education is at the heart of the program, where they recognize that people can be both the greatest cybersecurity risk, but also the greatest asset. They designed baseline briefings to raise the level of knowledge by providing basic, effective advice to those with little or no knowledge of cybersecurity. You would be surprised. Our highly trained officers spent day after day visiting businesses, either in groups or on their own, to share intelligence trends and to teach them how to keep themselves and their companies safe from cyber attacks. But city police recognize that the best way to learn is to first understand where your knowledge is deficient. So they developed the tabletop exercise, which they have been carrying out virtually during the time of the pandemic. The tabletop exercise is aimed at leadership of the businesses. It is unique and provides an opportunity for business leaders to take the role of the Chief Information Security Officer. I have to confess I've had to go myself, and I now know what I did not know before I embarked on the exercise. It is a safe, fun, and interactive environment and is an ideal way to highlight how cybersecurity decisions at the highest levels can impact a business. Rehearsing the remote response to cyber threats through virtual exercises strengthens the crucial link between tactical, technical, and strategic business areas. But City Police and Charlie Morrison believed that this was still not enough. They went further and developed the incident response training exercise, where they help businesses understand how the police command structure and decision-making process works during critical incidents. This helps businesses to review and improve their response to substantial cyber attacks. COVID-19 posed many operational challenges to the business world, but it is the ability to successfully respond to a cyber incident in spite of any other operational challenges, which is the major differentiator to an organization's survival. If this wasn't enough, in the land of international finance and professional services, City Police developed the Cyber Capability Assessment Program. They enter banks, financial institutions, and businesses in the financial mile, or connected to the financial mile, on invitation to provide a free of charge full assessment of their current security maturity level and highlight any identified vulnerabilities, and again, free of charge, produce multiple comprehensive and actionable reports tailored for board members through to practitioners performing any remediation. This allows the businesses to carry out much needed cyber risk assessments. Even the most sophisticated businesses and institutions are surprised at what they find. This is the best example of the public sector working closely with a willing private sector to help stave off harm. Collaboration between cybersecurity and business is key to an effective response. As I said, education is the key, and collaboration in education is just as important. Under the Commissioner Ian Dyson, the City Police further developed the City of London Police Economic Crime Academy, playing a pivotal role in the fight against economic crime and cybercrime. They provide a centre of excellence for training the wider crime community, both internationally and at home. Courses range from anti-bribery to counter-fraud, cyber to investigative skills, management to police-only skills. They have been called upon and have rolled out the academy in many countries worldwide now. And today, I am absolutely delighted, is the launch of the long-awaited Cyberpol Academy. Very timely, very needed. May I encourage you to move with this full steam ahead. Please don't look back. Hold on to your seats. The cybersecurity concerns apply equally to individuals and families, self-employed, sole traders, small, medium-sized organizations, large organizations, to the public sector, and dare I say, to cybersecurity professionals. Cybercrime, like the pandemic, knows no boundaries, but they cross borders and continents faster than you can say COVID-19. And to some of them, it is an addiction, no less stimulating than a puff or a sniff. I work in 3 different disciplines, in politics, in business, and in law. That is, as an alderman of the City of London Corporation, as chairman of the Turkish-British Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and as an international barrister of No. 5 Chambers. All 3 continuously lead me to the same place. Without energy, resource, skill, will, planning strategy, and above all, worldwide collaboration between agencies, both public and private. Cybercrime is one of the most dangerous catastrophes of the modern world. One, in fact, which Professor Stephen Hawking will never know. Whilst experts are trying to nationally find a vaccine to curtail COVID-19, the international cooperation of Cyberpol is some of the most important work of our time. Thank you.
Thank you. 1 minute left.
I'm done. Thank you.
Our apologies. And Kate, over to you.
Yes, very well stated. A wonderful speech. Thank you, Alderman. And now I know what an alderman is, so I appreciate the lesson in London civics. So next we will be talking about something that everybody is concerned about. I'm introducing these folks for the second time, but you will be very interested to see our next panel. We're going to talk about future threats. First up, we are going to have Eric Brabbing, former head of the Cyber and Counterterrorism Division for Israel's Shin Bet Security Agency, and someone who I hope, in addition,
just have to
yes?
interrupt. Matti is back on. Matti
He
Ingvar
is?
is
Okay,
back
great.
on. Yes, okay.
Okay, Maddie had some technical difficulties, so I'm going to redo this introduction. Maddie Ingvar will be going first. He is a well-known across Europe as the senior military and security correspondent for I-24 News. He's joined by Mr. Brabbing, who I've introduced already. And also we have somebody who I hope is up on Eastern Standard Time and suffering along with me here in New York is FBI Special Agent Darren Mott. He hosts the popular Cyber Guy podcast. Thank you all for joining us, and take it away, Maddie.
Thank you very much, Kate. Actually, I would like to thank President Baretsky, first of all, Irana, for organizing all that summit, and of course, Eric Brabbing and Darren Mott. And it's not usual actually for a journalist to speak with a former ISA senior agent and a FBA senior agent. So I would like them to please welcome me for starting this panel. Actually, I would like to ask you a question. You know, every time you wake up the morning, you asking yourself the question, what the journalists are going to say, and is this new fake or not? This is exactly the same question that I'm questioning myself every morning, because I have sources, but I have also AFP, Reuters, people are talking. And the problem in cyber security and cyber terrorism and regular terrorism, actually you have to ask yourself, when you're a journalist and you're talking from the television and millions of people can hear you, and also beyond that, thousands of people on the internet can relay your message. Do you ask yourself, actually, is this info credible or fake? Because you can create a mess. For example, let's say this morning, Iran just said this morning that it has been attacked by a foreign country in its national infrastructure in the harbor. And Iran is saying, because it's workable for them, they are accusing Israel. So should I say that immediately? Should I buy the message from Iran? Because, you know, in 3 days, they're going to be able, because the snapback hasn't been voted. So in 3 days, they're going to be able to sell arms, missiles, and to buy missiles. So they are speaking about a victory. And me as a journalist, do I have to buy the message coming from Iran, just saying, starting the bulletin by saying Iran has been targeted by Israel? Or should I work a lot and get deeper inside the intel? And this is exactly what's going on today. The problem is that because of internet, because of Twitter, because of all these platforms, so who's leading? Who's leading the intel? Who's leading the info? Do we know exactly, actually, if the senior political VIP is telling the truth? Does it serve only his own interest? So by what I'm saying, that is that we have to be very, very careful. A new example, what happened in the Beirut explosion a month ago. And President Baretsky knows exactly what I'm talking about, because we actually spoke a lot and very late. Everything was saying on the internet, and especially with videos of showing some missiles been targeting the harbor inside Beirut and saying that Israel did this. And oh, suddenly President Aoun and Hezbollah are actually putting forward that idea that Israel could be behind this explosion. So I've heard a lot of journalists in the US, in Europe, also in Russian television. And I have to say that a lot of journalists in Israel were very careful of what to say and what not to say, because we have to ask ourselves the correct question. And beyond that, I don't know exactly if this is the case in the US, but for example, as a military and security senior correspondent, I have to be aware and I have to receive briefings like once a week, twice a week, with senior agents of all the security agency. But my question should be beyond that. Should I threat by putting out this intel, this info? Do I pose a threat to the security forces that are on the ground, or should I think only of myself and putting forward this intel? For example, what was going on in Beirut, for example, I knew, I can't say more than that, but I knew there was some movement, international movement around Beirut a few days before the explosions. Should I put forward? Should I just launch this info inside the Twitter sphere, and say, okay, no problem, people are going to talk about, I throw this intel, and then afterwards, governments are going to pay for that. So we have to be very careful. When, for example, I'm on my show, on my defense show, I'm receiving Eric Brubbing that is going to talk about cyber threats. I ask him the question, do we know exactly who struck Iran? And his answer will be the same. I can tell only what I read into the newspaper. Why? Because you can't say everything. The war of scope is fantastic. It's great. You have to be actually fed by scopes all day long. But the same question will be always, do I pose a threat to the people that are working now while I'm talking, while I'm launching this intel into Twitter, why I'm live in front of the television? Should I pose a threat to the people on the ground or not? And that's the main question as a security and military journalist. So we have to be careful exactly of what we are saying, who the people we are talking to, and what will be the consequences later on, after we were actually telling exactly what was exactly, sorry, I have a fly over my head. So exactly what was saying the same hour or the hours before. So I don't know what time is it actually. I have 10 minutes left. I would like to speak also with the permission of Mr. Baretsky. When a senior VIP is giving me some pictures and asking me, for example, you need to publish these pictures because I know this leader has been wanted by USA, by France, by Israel, by other people. Should I buy it? Should I immediately throw it into Twitter and don't ask questions? No, the question is no, because okay, I'm gonna have a lot of thousands of followers later on, but I need to be glued to the info. I need to ask the correct questions. After all, does it serve my own interest, or does it serve the interest of the public? For example, I received a few months ago the intel that the former president of Seleka in the Republic Democratic of Congo has been bought by Iran to plan and to plot some attacks against Western targets. It was in internet. I just have been noticed by someone, by sources, by security sources, that the intel was exactly there. So I could have say immediately, or I needed to dig inside actually the intel. So what I did, I just call a lot of diplomatic sources, some security sources, and then I published it. The problem is that later on, when you publish it, you have to be actually very strong, because people are going to strike you back. That's the world today of cyber. You have to be strong. We are talking about a war. We're not talking, and the news are also a war, because once I launched an intel, this is like I launched a missile. I have to be sure that my bullet is going to be one shot, one kill. If not, I'm just going to spread a lot of missiles for nothing. Very casualties on the ground, very non-collateral casualties. So at the end, actually, what my job is to be exactly sure that while I'm talking to sources, while I'm preparing my bulletin, while I'm assisting briefings, security briefings, not only in Israel, also in the US, also in Russia, you have to be careful of who's talking to you. I'm going to talk about an example. If Ashakalau-Sat, this is a Sunni newspaper, it wants me to talk about Iranian plot, Iranian threat, should I buy it immediately? Should I say, okay, that comes from Ashakalau-Sat, which is a very known newspaper and very respected newspaper? No, actually, not at all. Because if I'm not asking the correct questions, I'm going to spread a propaganda. Everything today on regarding the cyber intel and cyber info is the border line between the fake news and the propaganda news and the correct news is very thin. The border is very thin. That's why actually I have to be careful. But in the other way, and I'm pretty sure that Arik and Daran are going to talk about that. They are not giving me the correct info because they can't. Because we are talking about top secret info, top secret intel. So what can I do? What can I say in front of I have an intel, but I can't confirm it. I can't confirm it. That's my problem. That's not a problem with the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, the ISA. Not a problem, because they knew exactly what the truth is. But I, as a journalist, as a security journalist, I have to be very, very careful about all the intel I'm spreading out and all the intel I want to spread out. I think I'm done because I can speak for hours, but I'm not sure, actually, I'm pretty sure that you would like to listen to the opposite side of my word. Once I receive the intel, who's leading this intel? Who's leading this operation? The people that are going to be on there in a few seconds, Arik Brabing, and I have to say that actually he's one of the well-known ISA agents. I've talked to him while he was leading hundreds of missions during the second Intifada and today also. Because, you know, the border also, that's I'm going to finish with, the border between cyber and regular terrorism today is very thin, That's why ISIS, that's why Hezbollah, Hamas are using their propagandas and feeding people with cyber, and at the end of the process, they are attacking. Thank you very much, Ricardo. Thank you very much, Irena. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was so illuminating. We really appreciate having you on. I'm sure you'll get some questions at the end of the session, so definitely stick around. And now
Yes,
we're going to go
please.
to Mr. Arik Brabbing. I'm sorry. Looking forward to hearing what he has to say on the other side of this intelligence question. Thank you.
Good morning.
We are waiting for you, Arik.
Can you see me?
Yes, you can go ahead. You can go ahead.
One. Okay, everything is good?
Yes, you are on.
Okay, good morning and thank you for inviting me. My name is Arik Brabbing. I am also known as Haris, and I was the head of the cyber division and the counterterrorism division in the Israeli security agency, the Shin Bet. This year, the world has faced an epidemic that has changed everything. We now work much more from home. Internet has moved to the internet, in fact. The use of internet has increased everything in every way. We are moving from physical interaction to digital interaction. And these challenges are extremely significant and we haven't fully understand the reputation of that. But this increased use of the internet also means increased cyber threats. Today, I would like to speak about the challenges we faced fighting cybercrime and terror. I will give some examples from the Israeli experience. So let me begin by comparing terror in the past and now. We have seen small terror groups develop into well-equipped militias with advanced capabilities. In Israel, terror has evolved from simple methods like throwing stone to bomb and suicide attacks, as well as lone wolf terror and cyber attacks. In the past, organized terror organizations were local and so easy to locate and deal with. We used human sources to infiltrate the organization and foil their activities. But today, terror lives and works in a global cyber world. Terror organizations and criminals use technology to promote their goals. Terror organizations can encrypt information and hide in the cyber arena. A wide range of ever-changing tools is needed to identify and foil. Also, the phenomena of lone wolves, people who live in the social media, people who are exposed to incitement and influenced by it, people who do not belong to any movement, but go out one a day and attack. These people create new challenges of they are a needle in the haystack. In the past, in the 19th, it was simple to collect information about communication. Today, everyone, including terror organizations, uses applications and they are encrypted. And even more than that, organizations, criminal and terror, have internal encrypted communication systems. In the past, planning a terror attack meant physically collecting information, going to site, observing. Today, it's all accessible on the internet, accurate and wide information about places and people. Google Maps, Google Street, and many other applications are available to everyone. We can get information about people's professions, personal lives, appearance, everything. In the past, criminal or terror organization would find it difficult to damage civilian infrastructure. Today, using the internet infrastructure is vulnerable and hacker can access information and or disrupt services. To sum up, we see enormous changes that have taken place over the past few decades. These changes have given criminals and terrorists capabilities that have created new threats and challenges for security organization. So, what is so simple? What is so simple for criminals and terrorists to use technology and cyber? What are the main characteristics of the internet that make it so convenient and easy to use for crime and terror? Some of the advantages of using cyber to commit terror attacks are, first of all, connectivity. People to people, people to devices and things, things to things, and we live today in an IoT world, Internet of Things world. Second, accessibility. Everyone lives on the internet and has easy access information about technological data, personal information, and anything else we would like to know. Cyber has made distance irrelevant, and our conference is a perfect example of that. The world is flat. More of that. Cyber allows anonymity. We don't always know who is on the other side. It also makes it easy to hide and easy to take a different identity. All the characteristics I mentioned enable the crime and the terrorists to plan, and to commit crimes. Hackers, criminals, and terror organizations do not always take responsibility for their activities. When one doesn't have the address of the criminal or the terrorist, when the attacker is unknown, it is difficult to react or to retaliate. And the deterrence is one of the important tools to prevent and counter crime and terror, of course. Summing up, all the characteristics I have mentioned add to the enormous challenge of creating the deterrence and fighting cyber attacks. There has always been connection between criminals and terrorists. We can see many examples of it. Criminals make money from supplying terrorists. Personally, I have found weapons on terrorists which came from criminal sources. Criminals sold dangerous materials to terrorists to produce bombs. On the other hand, we have the example of terror organization Hezbollah. I heard that we spoke about it before, which finance some activities using criminal means such as illegally growing and selling cannabis. Another example is Hamas in Gaza that use smugglers to get surveillance and other equipment into Gaza. The darknet is the main place to find criminals, terrorists, neo-Nazis, pedophiles, murders for hire. In the deep darknet, there is darknet and there is deep darknet. Terror organizations find proxies to attack Israel. Black hat hackers can be found to commit crimes like penetrating banks and stealing money, threatening rich people, for example, as well as hacking government and security organization. But not all is black. Why? Also, the intelligent organization have been playing there for many, many years. Of course, I cannot speak about it here. How do the terror organization use cyber? Firstly, to collect information, intelligence. As I already mentioned, terror organizations collect details about their targets. In Israel, we have a lot of experience of jihad groups and other extreme Islamic groups that try to penetrate sensitive computer systems, to hack critical infrastructure, and to collect personal information. We have many examples of Hamas attacking the army, the IDF, the Israeli police, the security and the government entities, as well as municipalities, private companies, universities, research, and other institutes. The information is used by the terror organization to build a picture of Israeli society, social vulnerabilities, to learn about our capabilities, and to get a complete picture of how Israel works. Secondly, the organization use cyber to attack, to cause damage and disrupt civilian services. Fortunately, in Israel, cyber attacks have not caused serious damage to computer systems, despite the many attempts. These attacks in Israel have been prevented by very advanced systems, which detect attackers before they cause damage. The critical infrastructure in Israel, water, electricity, banks, hospitals, and many, many other services is protected by law and regulation. We all deal with many kinds of hackers with different motivations, as criminal, political, terror, technological challenge, and other. Current attacks are DDoS attacks on the municipality services, for example, and private civil services as yet. That do not cause lasting damage. I want to explain. We have many DDoS attacks, but not so much damage. An example is the yearly DDoS attack of the Holocaust Memorial Day in Israel, targeting Yad Vashem. Yad Vashem is the Holocaust Memorial Center. These attacks are committed by anti-Semitic groups and around all over the world.
Sorry,
Mr. Brabing,
Arik.
may I
Yeah.
interrupt for 1 second? I'm sorry. I think that we're getting a little bit of feedback on your line. If you could just check it and make sure that it's in order. We're missing a few of your important comments. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Arik.
Can you hear me?
Yes, the technical team is listening. There's some feedback on your line. Just give it a second, just to slow down. Let's resume.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, you can go ahead and restart. I would suggest just maybe speaking up a little more, and that might get around it. Thank you.
Please proceed.
Now you can hear me.
Yes. The technical team can hear you. You're live.
Okay, but I don't. You can hear me.
Yes, there's some disturbances on your line. Shall we just take a second here, Kate?
Sure.
Now it's better or the same?
Would you like perhaps to move on to our next speaker and then come back at the end to finish up the last 10 minutes?
I cannot hear you.
Can you just repeat that, Kate, to Mastari?
Sure. I'm sorry. Would you like to move on to the next speaker and then come back for the last 10 minutes to see if Maddie's sound can be improved?
Okay, now I hear you very good.
Oh, good.
Okay,
proceed.
But
you sound very good now.
Go,
thank you.
Okay, you heard about the DDoS attacks?
You can repeat.
I want to know if you heard about the DDoS attacks.
The middle sentence you can repeat. You can proceed to repeat.
Okay. Now you can hear me, I understand, okay?
Please proceed.
Okay. So I spoke about the using of how terror use cyber, and I spoke about the DDoS attacks. Okay, and but I want to understand that all of you can hear me.
The technical team can hear you.
Okay. Okay. So now I want to speak last but not least about another things. The terror use cyber for influence. As you are aware, cyber influence has become an important capability used to change political decisions, national discourse, as well as interference in election in some countries. When we speak about terrorist use and influence, we have some well-known examples. We all have seen the cruel ISIS videos, which were made to recruit new members, as well as to threaten and create fear. Another example, during the military confrontation in Gaza in 2014, Hamas sent thousands of frightening messages to Israeli citizens, threatening to destroy Tel Aviv. As an example of different kind of influence, Hamas made many short YouTube videos demonstrating how to kill Jews. The videos motivate and inspire lone wolf terrorists to attack. Another example of terrorists using influence was when Hamas took control of Israeli TV broadcasting antennas in order to show their own threatening messages. Influence has become a very powerful method to change how people think and behave. The number of attempts to hack, steal data, collect information, and to attack computer systems for both terrorists and criminals has been growing. The bad news is that because of the corona and the increased use of the internet, this rise has been extremely sharp. So now let's look at solutions and how we can prevent many of these attacks. I would like to speak about domestic and international cooperation. Cybercrime and terror are not local problems. As I said before, the world has been flat. No one organization can deal with, and so we need cooperation within a country and international. But first, let me begin with domestic issues. In Israel, as I mentioned, there is advanced regulated cyber defense, especially for critical and sensitive infrastructure. The National Cyber Directory carries out this regulation. Recently, the directory has also begun to advise commercial, public, and private entities because they are an important component of the supply chain which connects the commercial world and the sensitive entities together. The fight against cyber terror and crime must be proactive, not just defense. We need to integrate our capabilities, artificial intelligence, all sorts of intelligence, human, SIGINT, metadata, open source. In order to do this, in Israel, we generate a body of all the intelligent entities, including IDF intelligence, the famous 8-200 unit, the Israeli Mossad, Shabak, police, and other experts to deal with cyber threats from countries, terrorists, and criminals. By pooling intelligence, we are able to produce high quality digital information and security intelligence. It allows us to identify our adversaries, to deter them, to attack them, and to neutralize them. In my opinion, the main challenge for the international community is to promote cooperation to fight cyber threats. As I said before, the cyber world is global, and pedophile in one country or hacker in other can influence or cause damage to people around the world. We need more cooperation, more coordination. We need to share data and intelligence. I know from our experience in Israel, it's so difficult for organizations to share sensitive intelligence. We want to protect our core capabilities, our sources, our methods. We understand that when we give information, we cannot fully control what happens with it. The big cyber companies need to be involved in the step taken for international cooperation. They have capabilities, data, knowledge, and experience, and many young, bright minds. They may have commercial interests in preventing cybercrime and terror. They have high quality products and services. The competition between them motivates them to deal with technological challenges. By working together, we can create higher level of deterrence in cyberspace. Again, deterrence is a basic step to prevent crime and terror, but not the only one. This conference is exactly the place in which to cement the important continuous connections between experts in cyber intelligence and research to promote cooperation. Organizations like Cyberpol are in the forefront of the fight to overcome cyber threats. I would like to thank you, President of Cyberpol, Ricardo Baretsky, for holding this conference and giving us this opportunity to work together. Thank you all.
Thank you so much for that really interesting talk. That was great. So many interesting guests in this panel. Now we're going to go to our next one, Special Agent Darren Mott with the Federal Bureau of Investigation here in the United States. Looking forward to hearing from you, Special Agent. Thank you. Take it away.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Cyberpol, for the opportunity to speak at this conference. It is certainly an honor for me to do so. I'm trying to share my screen, but it says I cannot while the other participant is sharing. So as soon as there we go. Okay, I should be able to do it now. There we go. All right, so hopefully you can all see that. Can everybody see my slides there? Can anybody hear me? Let me
technical team, yes, it's working.
Okay, great. So in my spending 20 years in the FBI, I managed and investigated cyber investigations as well as counterintelligence investigations. And what I've seen over those 20 years is how the cyber threats have evolved with the technology. And so this particular presentation that I have for you is a version of a presentation I gave to hundreds of companies. My goal since I retired from the FBI is to help companies and individuals prevent themselves from being the next cyber victim. I'm currently the Deputy Operations Director of the National Cybersecurity Operations Center. And so I speak to a lot of companies on what we do here and how to protect their networks from the ongoing threats that are targeting them. And so this presentation, again, is a scaled down version of that. And hopefully I can hit the highlights for what the threats are, from hacktivists all the way up to cyber warfare, so that it doesn't matter what kind of entity you are. If you are a private sector company, if you are a municipality, if you are a police department, you are being targeted by threats from all over the world, but they need to be looked at in classifications of severity. So a lot of this presentation, I'm going to talk about risk, and risk is threats times vulnerabilities. So I'm going to talk about what the threats are, because if you can understand what those threats are that are targeting you as an entity or as an individual, you can assess the vulnerabilities within your network and reduce that risk overall. Because the goal here is to reduce risk. You're never going to eliminate risk. The cyber problem is here with us forever. As technology advances, the bad guys are going to figure out how to exploit that technology quicker than anybody else. Law enforcement's going to be a little ways behind them, saying, oh, we need to figure out what's going on here. And then your politicians are going to be way in the back. And so laws are not going to exist to deal with those. So as a company, as an individual, you need to look at these threats, understand these threats, and you can reduce your cyber risk overall. So this is the cyber threat spectrum. This is something I would present that as the FBI looks at the cyber threat, this is how we classify those threats. Hacktivism on the left, all the way up to cyber warfare on the right. The key ones I would focus most entities on are the four in the middle. Hacktivism are more nuisance actors. Cyber warfare is going to be handled by your military institutions, but the four in the middle are really the big threats. You need to understand what they are and how they're attacking you. When we read the news, when you see articles in the newspapers, whatever, and they talk about cybercrime, everything seems to be a cybercrime, because cybercrimes get all the press, but your nation state actors get all the promotions. And I'll talk about what that means here in a second. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about cybercrime. Cybercrime obviously is you are using cyber tradecraft to further existing criminal activity, be it fraud, be it child pornography, be it ransomware, things of that nature are cyber crimes. Everybody needs to understand that and deal with that, but those particular threats are a little easier to deal with than the next three, which are inside the cyber insider, the cyber espionage threat, and the cyber terrorism threat. Now, the previous speaker did a great job talking about cyber terrorism, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. The way the FBI assesses cyber terrorism is very similar to the previous speaker in discussing that, you know, they use cyber tradecraft for propaganda and recruitment largely. Is the United States, as we looked at these threats, do we worry about cyber terrorism taking down critical national infrastructure related entities? Absolutely. We're worried about them targeting the power sector or the banking or the finance industry. But currently, we do not necessarily assess them to have that particular capability. The problem is going to be, as technology advances, their capabilities are going to advance with that, and terrorism, as we go further down the line, is going to become a much larger threat to all entities. Because one of the things I always heard from companies as I talked to them was, a lot of them would say, well, I don't have anything anyone would want. I can guarantee you, regardless of where you are sitting today, whatever business you are in, whatever industry you work in, you have something someone wants. And those two big areas of threat concern are the two in the middle, the cyber insider and cyber espionage. Cyber espionage is those nation state actors that are using cyber tradecraft to steal intelligence, not only from national security related type entities, like, for example, obviously there's a lot of targeting of United States governmental officials with an election going on here in 2020. Surely there is a lot of talk about foreign influence by nation state actors, and that is certainly ongoing. But it doesn't matter what entity, what business you're in. If you create computer chips, if you create some widget specific in your field, there are nation state actors in certain countries that are looking to target you to steal that proprietary information so they don't have to develop it. In addition to using cyber tradecraft and their intelligence services to do that, they are looking to target insiders. Insiders are your traditional, really your traditional spies, if you will. And so nation state actors are looking to find those individuals that have access to your network to compromise them to steal that information. And again, these threats are going to do nothing but become more problematic as technology advances. One of the big things that we see here in the United States is a lot of telephone call crimes and online crimes of that nature that are very easy to root out that they are not coming from a legitimate entity. If you get an email from Microsoft that says you need to update or patch a system, it's in badly worded English, and you can kind of look and say that's really probably not from Microsoft, and you can kind of mitigate that risk pretty simply. With AI, and AI, artificial intelligence, is quickly advancing to become more useful. That particular threat becomes more reasonable because they can use AI to correct the problems they currently have with making their introductions or their areas look realistic. So I think you're going to see that AI become a much bigger problem for all of these threats going forward, because each of these threats can utilize that technology to advance what they're looking for. So this is another way to look at that particular threat spectrum. If you're a company, most companies need to worry about tiers 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you're a bank, if you are just a general company that makes some widget, the first 4 are probably going to be targeting you from ransomware, business email compromise, things like that. It is the more significant companies that have to deal with those global state actors. So this is just a slide that kind of shows the previous slide in a different manner. And one thing I will say at the end of this, my email is on my last slide that I'll show. If anybody wants any of these slides, feel free to email me at the end of this or during the day, and I will forward them to you. These are not proprietary to me or the FBI, so I'm happy to share them. And I have some other information I'll talk about at the end. So the cyber threat is very complex in the sense that if you look at who is being targeted, it's hard to figure out what threat is targeting that particular entity. So this slide has a couple of data breaches or compromises that have occurred that if you look at them separately, they look like cyber crimes. But if you look at them collectively, they become much more nation state oriented. So Blackbound is a website that helps nonprofits here in the United States. They got hit with ransomware. They allegedly paid the ransom and got their data back. However, that particular ransomware also stole private information that they had to pay a ransom to get that information allegedly deleted. Here in the United States, several years ago, the Office of Personnel Management was compromised by Chinese nation state actors that stole all of the personal information of pretty much anybody who worked in the United States government. Anthem is a health insurance company here in the United States that was also compromised. We have Equifax, which is a credit bureau. So people's credit information was stolen, and Marriott is a hotel chain. So if you look at each of those individually, you say, oh yeah, cybercrime, obviously, maybe OPM was China and nation state activity. But I want you to think about it from this perspective. Combine that information together. If I am a nation state, and in this case, I'm going to use China as my example, and they're not the only ones that do this, but let's just use that as an example. But you have information taken from the Office of Personnel Management in the United States. So everybody who works in the US government. Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield is health related information. So you have that data, and you have Equifax's debt data. And so if you know that John Smith works for the Department of Homeland Security, and you know that from the OPM breach. If you look at the Anthem breach, you know that he is suffering from terminal cancer. And because of Equifax, he owes his hospital $100,000. Well, you also know, if you've collected data from Marriott, that he is spending his vacation in South Carolina from March 1st to March 7th. If I am a nation state intelligence service and I want information from the United States, I know that John Smith owes his hospital money. I can go find him at the Marriott. I can send a human actor there to offer him $200,000 for a little bit of information that I can convince him is really not going to be very problematic if he gives it. I have now created a spy. And this is where the cyber threat and the counterintelligence threat have really blended together to be really, honestly, the largest threat issue that most entities should worry about, yet most do not, because they think about the ransomware, they think about the business email compromise. They don't think, again, that a nation state is looking to target them individually. And I argue that is incorrect. You have to look at all of these threats together and figure out who is targeting them, and do I have something in place to deal with that? So this is another example. It's from a website called informationisbeautiful.net, and it shows historical data breaches. And if you look at this, I mean, you see Pakistani mobile operators, 115 million data records were stolen. Twitter, 330 million. One that is not on here, because this only shows like 2020 to 2018. If you go down to 2015, I believe, the Yahoo data breach was 5 billion user accounts and passwords compromised. And I show this slide to make people understand that you may think you don't have anything anyone would want. Well, your data is out there. There's information out there that hackers, both criminal hackers, nation state hackers, your cyber espionage guys, and even your cyber terrorists are going to use to target you in some way, shape, or form to get the information that they want based on your access to it. So cyber criminal threats, I kind of show this to kind of show what the big cyber criminal threats are. The two big ones that we worry about in the United States the most currently, at least the biggest threats at this time, are kind of in the middle there: ransomware and business email compromise. Everybody knows what ransomware is. I don't need to go into any great detail on that. Business email compromise is when a criminal hacker, it's generally criminal in this case, gets into an email account, a legitimate email account within a company, and then sends emails internally to get them to transfer money somewhere. It's a several $billion a year lost business. And I have some additional information on both ransomware and business email compromise that I'm happy to send anyone. It's FBI generated intelligence that I'm free to send. So again, at the end, if you want to email me at any time, I will send that information to you just for your awareness. My whole key here is, before I was an FBI agent, I was a teacher. So I had a master's degree in education. I now have a master's degree in cybersecurity. So my passion are those two things: educating folks on the current cybersecurity threats, because again, I want to prevent you from being the next victim. Nation state cyber actors are looking at this a little differently. These are your counterintelligence / cyber threats. They want to use cyber tradecraft to commit espionage. I mean, in the past, if you wanted to get someone to spy for you in their country, you had to train someone, send them to the United States or wherever you're sending them, to whatever country you want that espionage to exist in, have them get the information they want, steal it, and get it back to your home country. Very expensive, very tedious. Now, line up a row of computers, set 100 people in front of them, say, go target Boeing, or go target Raytheon, or go target, pick the industry within your country that is very important to your national security. They are going out and looking for that information because they don't have to send anyone anywhere. They are doing personal identifiable information theft. And this is the big one: theft of economic and proprietary information. I want you to think about, wherever you're sitting right now, what is the biggest company within your country that creates your national defense type products. They are being targeted 24 hours a day by nation state actors looking to steal that economic and proprietary information. That's why certain countries have jets that look like other countries' jets, or certain countries have missiles that look like other countries' missiles. But it's not just national defense information, it's economic information as well. It's not just national defense. And they'll use cyber tradecraft for reconnaissance and for asset development and proliferation, some warfare planning, because remember on that threat sheet at the very end was cyber warfare. I would argue that we are currently cyber warfare is currently ongoing. It is not a future threat. It is a current threat that is here today. There is cyber warfare going on at very small increments, if you will. But if you look at it from a perspective of it's a lot cheaper, it's a lot easier to say it wasn't us, because attribution is the biggest problem, as mentioned before. So you can't really likely attribute an attack to a certain nation state, and it's less expensive, and honestly it's less deadly currently, but it gets the same impact. And they're targeting academic research. Again, if you are an academic institution, if you do not think that cyber actors, specifically nation state actors, are targeting you for the research you're doing, then you need to pull your head out of the sand and think about how to protect that data, how to address the threats that are coming at you, and try to minimize them to mitigate that cyber risk. And I will say this, I've said this here in this country, but I can say it for pretty much everybody on this call. Your public and private sector companies are being targeted for the information they have. You cannot sit here and you cannot sit and think that you do not have something someone wants. Everybody has something someone wants. These are some cybersecurity stats. You can go see these on Varonis.com. The big one I want to point out here is that the average cost currently for a ransomware attack is $133,000. It is accelerating at a very rapid rate. Cyber hackers are doing great reconnaissance to figure out who you are as a company and how much money you have. If you are a bigger company and you have a lot of money, they're going to target you and they're going to boost that ransom up. The nice thing about ransomware that we've seen is that you can negotiate with ransomware actors and reduce the ransomware so it doesn't cost you as much. So feel free. Now the FBI recommends not paying the ransom. On my podcast this week, I talked to the guy who said the same thing. We shouldn't pay the ransom because it would starve them, the ransomware actors, from doing what they're doing. The problem is, and I understand this from a business perspective, sometimes you just need your data back. And so if you have to pay for that data through the ransomware, you have to do what you have to do. The average time to identify a data breach is 206 days. What that means is an actor gets into your network, you're not going to know about it for almost 7 months. And chances are you're not going to find it. It's going to be a law enforcement entity that goes to you and says, hey, you've got this data breach. I know I made that report to companies many times in my career, and that's a bad day for that company. And the average life cycle of a breach is 314 days. And currently, if you suffer from a data breach, it's going to cost you roughly $3.92 million to mitigate that data breach, which is why education is so important, because your first line of defense is your employee base. And it doesn't matter, again, what business you're in. If you are a police department, if you are a municipality, if you are a private sector company, employees are going to be how hackers get in with phishing attacks. 90% of the cases the FBI worked and currently works started with a phish attack. Someone clicked on a link or clicked on an attachment they shouldn't have, and that's what compromised the system. So what are cyber actors looking for? This is what criminal hackers are looking for. Intelligence services, and I would argue to a certain extent terrorism groups as well, are looking for this information. However, they also want vulnerabilities to exploit because they can use that against other companies, and they want to persist within the networks. That is why it takes 206 days for you to identify a breach, because they want to stick around in there. The intelligence services use malware that is not commonly found in the criminal world because they save it for themselves, and they're a lot harder to detect. And they're looking for individuals to compromise. They're looking for those insiders to become spies. So some points to note: data breaches are not slowing down. We are spending lots of money on cybersecurity, but I will tell you this, technology is not going to get you out of this problem. You have to educate your employees in order for them to be your first line of defense. Nobody expects to be a victim. I have yet to go talk to a company where the first thing they said is, we knew it was going to happen to us. Here we are. No one expects to be a victim. If you get called by law enforcement, it's too late. If you call law enforcement, it's too late. If they call you, that's a bad, bad day. Identify your crown jewels and protect them. I know I'm running short on time, so I'm going to get to my last slide here real quick. 4 keys to mitigating your risk. Use multi-factor authentication on everything and anything you can turn it on for. I'm not going to talk a lot about this. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I have more detailed information on a lot of these things. Have long and distinct passwords. If you have more than 13 characters in your password, you are unlikely to be compromised, or at least you are unlikely for that particular password to be compromised by a bad guy. Use virtual private networks wherever you can, and increase awareness training for your employees. One of the things I always say when I sign off on my podcast is understand the threats that are attacking you. In other words, who's coming at you? Is it a criminal actor, nation state actor, cyber terrorist, what have you? Understand those threats, assess your risks, and proceed wisely as you go throughout your day on your network. Protect those crown jewels, figure out where your digital assets are. So this is my personal information. I do host a Cyber Guy podcast. I appreciate Kate saying it was popular. It's really not that popular. It's kind of new. I just started it. You know, if you want to listen to it, that would be great. Feel free. My email there. I do have it, like I said, more information on business email compromise and ransomware. And so feel free to email me. I will send that stuff out. I am not. Again, for me, it's education. I'm not profiting on any of this. I am happy to send out information where people would want it or need it so that they can, again, reduce their risk. And my LinkedIn profile is down there. Here in the United States, it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So every day I am posting something that has to do with some cybersecurity topic. The last several days have been on this threat spectrum. Today is the last one. I'm talking about cyber warfare today. So feel free to follow me there or look it up there. And again, I appreciate the time. Thank you, Ricardo, for inviting me. Thank you, Kate, for the introduction.
Thank you so much, Darren. I really appreciate it. And I think as someone who lives in the media world, I'm shocked that you wouldn't call your own podcast popular, no matter what. I'm sure it is. Humility is not a virtue, I promise. In any event, thank you so much both to Maddie and Arik as well. Really fascinating presentations, and we learned so much. So now it's my pleasure to reintroduce the president of Cyberpol, one of the most influential voices in cybersecurity and crime internationally, Ricardo Baretsky. Ricardo has a lot to say about the mission of Cyberpol, why you should join and be engaged with this organization. Ricardo, thank you for joining me. Let's start by asking you to give us a brief timeline of Cyberpol, when you were established and where you are today.
Cyberpol was established during 2015. The program is a total of 8.5 years old. We started the program roughly in early of 2012. We were approved by a royal decree with the support of several officials and governments. And today it's a public utility under Treaty 124, serving the public. We focus on specialized organized crime. We let the police, of course, do their national work. We don't interfere with national work. Article 3 is very clear. Cyberpol is forbidden to interfere with political objectives and national interest. We're totally autonomous. We are the largest independent volunteer network as well in the law enforcement, just over 2,000 volunteers worldwide. And, you know, we've grown exponentially, you know, with a lot of hurdles. In the first stages of Cyberpol's life, of course, we realized there's also the oppositions that suddenly realized they have a new boss in town. But Cyberpol is the only organization of its kind in the world that is approved in such a manner and totally autonomous and run totally separate from government. Although under Article 47 and 46, all governments is technically a member of Cyberpol. This is an ongoing process. We are finishing phase 1 this year. Phase 2 of Cyberpol will spread its wings to the international cyber monitoring, cyber threat detection, and international coordination in broadening the legal platform.
Well, tell me a little bit about how Cyberpol works with the other organizations that some people on this event might be more familiar with, like Interpol or Europol. How do all these pols work together?
Well, we have mentioned this, and originally when I was chairman from the counterterrorism summit, we realized that there's a need for international cooperation. Unfortunately, till to date, we are seen like more like an opposition to some actors. But on the other hand, we have a strong relation with the US. We have a growing relation with the US agencies. In particular, we have a very strong relation with Israel. We have very strong relation with other agencies in the world that is realizing the need for coordination with Cyberpol. We of course open our door. We still invite Interpol and Europol to come to the table. The fact remains that Cyberpol is one of a kind. There's only one Cyberpol in the world, and there's only one mandate of Cyberpol. In essence, the law enforcement industry is undergoing a major change at this moment, which is understandable that we are integrating from traditional policing to cyber policing. And cyber policing is a new form of policing. And we still have to do a lot of education in the traditional sense to global law enforcement. We must not forget that less than 1% of global law enforcement has any idea of cyber education. And that's already a big problem. So Cyberpol is working hard on solving these particular issues.
So tell me a little bit more about how Cyberpol is helping to solve that education gap.
Well, I have the pleasure, first of all, to announce today Dr. Stelios, who spoke earlier for us, the chairman of the EIMF, the Compliance Institute for European Union. They have just recently funded a JVC program under the Cyberpol umbrella, which is launched actually today. The website cyberpol.academy is officially live from yesterday. So please, everyone, if you're looking for certified cyber education that's compliance and regulated, that's a place to go. And this program, we hope to educate roughly an estimated 100,000 law enforcement officers over the next year. We are currently broadening the partnership with UK as well as other countries. And I think this is a way forward. Is compliance and regulation and certification. We need to make sure that law enforcement officers is certified and they have to comply in a recertification every year or two to maintain upgraded. The industry changed too fast not to be upgraded.
So one of the things that you've talked about a lot today, and including, I know that we've discussed before when it comes to educating law enforcement professionals about issues of corruption, corruption that might pervade even law enforcement agencies themselves. Why this focus on corruption by Cyberpol and not strictly cybersecurity? How are they intertwined?
Well, let me explain to you, and this is something we put very prominent in evidence during the 2013 and 2014 cyber terror summits in Europe, and particularly. The days where organized crime, corruption is separated from terrorism is almost over. Everything is interlinked. With the birth of cryptocurrencies in particular, such as Bitcoin, we have seen that the corruption integrated very easily with organized crime. And so did organized crime fairly easily integrated with cyber. The problem that it causes is that it made a huge gray area, which law enforcement as a whole had no idea and still is fairly, to a certain level, restricted in education of what is that gray area. The gray area between these issues in cybercrime is for sure linked in the economy. And when the economical structure gets embedded with organized crime using the internet, it becomes in cyber issues. So we see corruption as a prime issue in cybercrime. For example, I can't divulge certain information, but we have seen cases recently whereby sums of money, and I'm talking about in hundreds of millions, is stolen from governments using cybercrime and organized crime combined. And there's a strong reluctance of governments to actually openly say, well, we've lost $300 million or we've lost $600 million. These figures keeps on growing. They're no more in the tens of thousands. They are in the hundreds and billions of dollars. I think the biggest case we have seen recently was just over $1.5 billion stolen from a single theft from a government. So, and it's a bit alarming that we are still having law enforcement and many agents out there that is not educated and not even be able to put the computer on and off. And this is the reality. So we can no longer focus on a single segment. We have to focus on the root of the real problems. And the root of the real problems is often driven by capital. And it's an undeniable fact that the drive force of all corruption and crime and internet is capital driven. It's impossible to separate these segments.
Very interesting. These law enforcement agencies, education is a big component of it, but of course, information sharing is as well. How does Cyberpol work to help these international law enforcement agencies share information, even when they might, from a diplomatic point of view, not be getting along very well?
It's complicated, but Cyberpol is doing progressive work. We are constantly expanding the relations. We are expanding our partner relations, public-private partnerships as well. Another good thing that I can mention, in December, we will be launching the first public-private partnership SOC, Security Operational Center. It will be announced officially in December as well. But kind of and through these kind of initiatives, we can coordinate. Fortunately, at the moment, we have realized that the biggest need at the moment that we find is not so much the international cooperation as such, but rather the track and trace. Often when these crimes happen, the stumbling block arise when there's no possibility either to prosecute or to track and trace the perpetrators. And that is one of Cyberpol's strong positions, that we assist the facilities to track these individuals down using the cyber capability. We can confidently say that we have part of the world's best, and I really mean truly best, cyber capability on our list, including our volunteers list. So it makes us a very strong competitor. But we also have to recognize that we need a change in judicial reform. And that is the current issue that is a stumbling block for almost every international coordination in law enforcement. And the reality is all the current legislations to a certain degree is out of date in cybercrime. We need to understand that law enforcement must have the ability to communicate freely when it comes to urgent matters. And these stumbling blocks needs removing. And we foresee that this will play a huge role in the future.
So I think, from the perspective in the U.S., there have been a lot of failures to have a good diplomacy, a good information sharing with a lot of nations, especially nations that we've viewed as a threat, Russia, China. Is there any way that we can normalize some kind of cybersecurity information relationship between some of these countries that have big problems with each other?
Well, Cyberpol, you know, if you look at the way Cyberpol was established, it was established to stay objective. You know, it is slowly becoming a mediator, very slowly. The key factor, yes, is that we have to stay objective in the political interest and not get subjective involvement. Russia technically is a member of Cyberpol as well as the US under the articles in the statutes. The question is, do they have the need to collaborate under the current climate? We need to realize that the current climate is edging on Cold War climates around the globe. And unless we find a mutual ground very soon, I'm afraid to say that the situation is going to get a lot worse. But fortunately, Cyberpol organization has maintained its doors. We keep its objectives, and we make sure that the integration is on track. So I can say for sure we are getting there, but there's still a few hurdles ahead.
Tell me a little bit about those hurdles. What do you see as some of the things that you will have to overcome in the next 5 years that you hope the people on this call today or the people who you're working with can help you overcome? What are some of the biggest?
I think there's a few. The legal platform is there. The organization is there, but we are still now entering the second phase, which is the legal integration. And that is the next 5-6 years plan, is scheduled over 5 years, whereby all the legal integration network with the governments is further extended. This is a long process, Kate. This is not a process that we built that's going to finish in my life. You know, it more than likely it's only beginning in my life. The reality is that the technical integration, for example, we are currently working on a international cyber treaty, Cyberpol cyber treaty, and we already have seen serious interest in developing this treaty to replace the Budapest Convention and the existing treaties, because the current treaties that is in place is only two: the cyber treaty, the Budapest Cyber Convention, doesn't cover any ability to really solve international technical issues. It covers fundamental things, but we have to go the step further. We need to give an international cyber treaty the enforcement power to act immediately, so that issues doesn't go out of hand. You know, we've seen, for example, how state actors can use fake media, and how state actors can spread information to win an election. You know, I don't want to point out any names, as you can understand, but if we have the right combination that will solve the problems for everybody, I believe that it will bring a long-term stability to our world, which is currently, you know, as one of our speakers said, is practically a flat world. The cyber world, you know, is there. But, you know, it's going to take some time. There's no rush in it. And, you know, but it's important also, you know, it's very difficult for organizations to come to grips that they have a new boss in town. And it's not that simple for them. So we have got to give them time to grow. And I believe that they're slowly realizing where we are at.
Thank you. And just a reminder, if you are one of the other speakers, please make sure you're muted. I heard a few voices coming over there. Let's talk a little bit more about this treaty, because this is very interesting. One of the things that we've seen a lot of discussion about globally has been, you know, coming from Bill Gates and some other prominent people, is coming up with a sort of Geneva Convention on cybersecurity, having some international norms as far as cyber warfare, what is acceptable, what is considered an offensive measure that could be retaliated against. Is there anything like that in there, and how are you as Cyberpol dealing with that?
Well, the current conventions that you're referring to, they are not exercised in a way where they can directly target the organized crime. They are indirectly serviced. And most of this is functional under the UN. But the problem that we see is that the state actors is pulling its own weight against itself inside the UN, and that creates a lot of problems for expanding the current treaty on cyber. It's good to refer to these treaties, but we need judicial reform. Unless we have judicial reform around the globe, rebuild the image, rebuild the law enforcement image, I'm afraid to say that traditional law enforcement is about to fail. We can see this. We've mentioned this recently. The COVID-19 has changed things. We have seen since January this year that cybercrimes has increased roughly 350% compared to last year this period. International coordinated organized crime has increased rapidly. We have seen victims increased. We're standing now at cyber victims average, and that is per major capital in Europe. And the US is standing on similar figures of roughly 6,000 to 7,000 victims a day. So, that is just if you combine the capitals in the world per capita. We have seen that roughly between 6 and 7 million victims of cybercrime in Europe last year. We're speaking about people who has lost sometime everything, elderly people. And now we have noticed that during the Corona times that criminals has gone the extra way. Cyber criminals will now target your small pension because there's no other ways to do organized crime. The route has changed. So since you are now forced by the current lockdown, things has rapidly changed. The whole mechanism of organized crime has changed. And we still maintain that this needs immediate reform. We need to realize that a law that has no power is no law. We have to realize that a law that is there, that has no meaning, is no law. And a law that's not enforceable is no law. And the problem with these current legislation is that they are outdated, vastly outdated. And I foresee that things is going to change in a big way very soon, because our prediction is that the coronavirus will be here for some time to stay. It's not going to go away. So it's unavoidable that Cyberpol is taking the lead, you understand? And we invite all those participants to maintain their status and work together with us in making this happen. It is a necessity for survival globally.
So I like that we're talking about coronavirus because I think it's sometimes difficult to quantify, how much more crime that we're seeing out there. You also talked a lot about the financial consequences to individuals. How is Cyberpol partnering with the financial services organizations? Do you have anything in the works to increase the bonds between law enforcement and international finance?
Yes. Well, the first step that we did now was the partnership with the EMIF, which will bring the compliance to banking industry. From next year, I think it will be a real wake-up call for the European banking industry in particular, that the compliance is coming. And I think that through this processing of education, we'll be able to reform that and bring the important part for banking industry, monetary systems to realize that they are already interlinked with Cyberpol one way or another. The question is, where is our current digital world and current financial world, monetary world going? The Bitcoin, for example, and I want to bring this to a second here, has changed the way cybercrime operates, and it's also changed the banking industry. It's okay to say, well, we have the money in a bank, and there's no difference between a bank and that of a Bitcoin. However, with the Bitcoin, you can't trace it. It's more difficult. There's no account owner. It's extremely difficult to prove ownership of any account. With a bank account, there's an ownership and then verified, vetted ownership of the bank account. And this is the first big problem that we see that is grown over the last 5 years in particular. When you have billions and billions of dollars shifting that's untraceable, it not only affects the crime, it not only affects the man on the street, but it affects the government economy. It affects the legitimacy of the economy. And we need to see urgent changes here. Cyberpol is working on it. We are aware that, my recent Bitcoin announcements has affected a tremendous amount of people. But the fact remains is we need everybody on board, and we can't afford, we can't say, well, we support a free monetary system, but we want crime to disappear. You can't have your hand, your bread buttered on both sides. And this is where the stumbling block lays. And this separates us from the rest of the law enforcement as a Cyberpol agency, because we do not participate in any funding projects is related to cryptocurrencies for many reasons, whereby we are fully aware that most of the competitors today would not hesitate to take funding that is related to Bitcoins or something else. And those is little things that makes it extremely difficult, but we foresee that in the end of the day, our competitors and those who thinks that they can obstruct justice will have to face justice by Cyberpol one way or another. It's not avoidable. Many people don't know this. This could be interesting for the viewers. Article 2 of Cyberpol is the only article in the world of its kind that allows Cyberpol to monitor any such activities without a court order in public interest. And that's a game changer. But the fact is that we also need we would prefer to say to the participants, come to us and we work with you to solve the problems. Don't let us find the problem and come to you. It's like FBI Darren Mott said earlier, it's a problem when the FBI knocks on your door. Well, it's a bigger problem if Cyberpol knocks on the door because it's past the point of return. You understand? And I think this is the important part. We've successfully done many works. Last year, we had tremendous success in cooperation with the US in some prosecutions and the Caribbeans. I thank our partners of the Caribbean, particularly Jamaica and the agencies around. We are getting there, but the world needs to realize we need public support. And Cyberpol mission is not to influence public, but rather support the public. We invite the public to let us know. If we know what crime is out there, we can make a difference. If you don't tell us, there's crimes, we can't connect the dots. If we can't connect the dots, we can't act. And basically, this is a fundamental part.
So thank you so much for these words so far. And to conclude, I'm interested in what you have planned for the next year or so as far as more events like this. I'm sure people will want to be discussing things like your monitoring that you just mentioned and how it works, how it works with international law, international norms. Tell me about what you're going to have for people to learn more about what you're doing in the coming months.
Well, what we have made available today is the first virtual summit. There will be a second one in every 6 months from now, 5 to 6 months. And we realize a need for international partnerships, international cooperation, public partnerships, and we want the public to participate in these summits. I think this is a very first summit of its kind where law enforcement agents is doing a public seminar. I don't recall there was a seminar like this ever in the past 20 years, whereby public could actually watch live what's going on behind the scene, kind of thing. So, and the reason why we did today is to show public that Cyberpol is not the enemy, but at the same time they need Cyberpol and we need them more than anything. So I think that we will have a lot of new programs coming up, and we will discuss that also during the closing session today, and inform you and the public about new initiatives like the Cyberpol Private Eyes for detectives, the detective agencies around the world, and many others that we are working on at the moment.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Ricardo. I'll ask you if you have anything else to say before we break for lunch. Any more closing words? Well, just thank you to all our supporters, to the public out there. Remember, stay safe. The COVID-19 is a serious thing. Don't ignore it. Pay attention, and we hope to play a role to inform you in future. And please, if you have a need, contact Cyberpol. Thank you. Okay. Now we're going to break for lunch. We'll be back at 1 o'clock. I hope that's correct. Yes. Okay, I'm checking to make sure. I'm a little turned around because it's 5:30 a.m. here. So we'll be back at 1 o'clock Tel Aviv time. Looking forward to hearing more from some great panelists, and enjoy your lunch. Thank you.